CSG, as well as Christopher Cycli and Michael Losasso. The name of the architectural firms escaped me, I'm sorry. You all let us know who you are when you come up. Sorry about that. Antonazzi, thank you, that's the name. Appreciate it. So we've been going through a process in preparation for the middle school renovation application to the state for a Renovate Like New project. In that process of preparing and also preparing for a referendum vote on the project, the town heard from a number of owner project managers and elected to bring in CSG, or voted to bring in CSG as our approved project manager. We've been working together in developing the pre-project stages, so that's why these gentlemen are here tonight to give an overview of what's been done so far, where we are in the process, and what's to come. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. We will just run you through about 20 minutes or so of presentation. Thank you, Steve, for making the introductions. Tonight you'll hear from myself, and you'll hear from Mike Losasso from Antonazzi. We're going to share a little bit on the presentation slides. So if we could skip to the next slide. Thank you. So what you see up here is a pre-referendum process and timeline, and there are several steps that we take in every one of these pre-referendum school projects to get us to town referendum. Each project is different. We've laid sort of the roadmap here in our process to get the middle school to referendum. And as you can kind of see, we are about halfway through that process right now. We started a few months back, and one of the initial things that we did in our, I guess I should explain our team, so we're the owner's representatives. We've got Mike Losasso and his team from Antonazzi are our architect designers that are going to work on the conceptual drawings. We've got a few members of our own team who are working with the district folks to put together the ed specs for the middle school. And then our job is to really combine the ed spec programming into the conceptual drawings, present it to the state as a Renovate as New. So what we first did was we went through and did a complete building and site analysis, and Mike has completed a draft of that report that we've shared with folks from the town. We had a key stakeholder meetings, so Amy and Steve and their team all got together over several weeks and went to build the education specs together. We developed our project timeline, and then we drafted those educational specs. So we went through 3 or 4 iterations of that before we got to the specification plan that we liked. We then created conceptual design options, and we have reviewed thoroughly the education specs, and we've started to analyze that conceptual design option and try to start what we're calling a test fit. So you'll see today a little bit of a first draft at a test fit. It's not the last draft by any means, but the idea was to take the programming that we developed in the ed specs, put it into the existing building to see if it would fit. So we've, Mike and his team put together a concept. There are many iterations, I believe, of this that's going to move forward before we come to the final conclusion. And you heard Steve talk a little bit about some waivers, and so we'll get to that moving forward. So over the next couple of slides, I'll ask Mike to kind of go through the building analysis, what we've found, where we're moving forward, and then I'll come back and talk a little bit about the ed specs. Mike?
Thank you, Mark. Good evening. Again, my name is Mike Losasso with Antonazzi Associates. Could we advance the slides, please? Do you have a, oh, there you go. This particular slide is not particularly interesting text information, but it's an example of the format that we use when we generate these types of reports. We were very fortunate that Plainville has a large repository of information associated with the middle school. And so we were able to draw upon existing drawings and have a great resource through Stephen Bussell of information about the facilities management of the school. Next slide, please. We performed, this was really the first step that we took from the architectural design point. While the ed specs were being drafted by other members of the team, the architectural and engineering design team toured the facility and did a photographic visual inspections of the existing facilities. Our engineer on the project, Consulting Engineering Services, or CES, actually has done some work here in Plainville prior to the study, so they were actually quite familiar with the facility. And through this analysis, we were able to assemble a series of it's basically a report that's submitted as part of the submission that goes to the state to give an accounting of the existing conditions. Part of our effort was to analyze both a renovation project and a new project. And after the facilities analysis, I think we're leaning toward the renovation for the school versus trying to build an entirely new school. Next slide, please. These are just some additional images in addition to the mechanical system. Plumbing, heating, lighting. We looked at the building envelope as well. In some ways, it's actually a treat to work on a building that was constructed in 1992. Normally, we see buildings from the 50s or 40s. So this one is actually in quite good shape by comparison. But the lifespan of the mechanical systems is the roof and windows have exceeded their service. So those are examples of some of the systems that we're going to recommend be replaced. Next slide, please. This particular drawing is actually from our Revit program. We were able to take the existing construction drawings and translate them into a 3D drafting program. And it gives us a very exacting analysis of the square footage. We were able to confirm also that based on the structural grid and the size of the spaces, that the building was essentially constructed the way it was drawn. There were a few instances where we made corrections based on our visual inspections, but we feel confident that the information that we have is accurate. Next slide, please. And I'll give this back to Mark.
So as I mentioned before, we had a few members of CSG's team who worked with Amy and her team. We had about 30 individuals or so participate in the development of that draft educational specifications. We worked with Amy to create a long-range educational plan, so we focused a lot on STEAM, safety and security, collaboration space, increased classroom size. Right now you're under about 600, right around 650 square feet of a classroom. OSCGR, the state likes to see somewhere in upwards of 800 to 900. We've specified somewhere in around 750 in our abilities to kind of move forward. Mike will talk a little bit more about that. The cross-discipline learning, unified arts, technology, and overall flexibility of space to give middle school of Plainville an opportunity to be more flexible over the next 20 years or so. We've identified individual department goals, ensuring that they align with Connecticut curriculum framework and grade level expectations as outlined by the Connecticut Department of Education. Really set the parameters of the based on projected enrollment. So right now, the enrolled students, grades 6, 7, and 8, overall enrollment per the updated projections is about 554 students. That proposed population is based on the highest projection of 8 years of enrollment, so which happens to be in the year 2022-2023. So the size of the facility and the proposed project capacity, based on the following summary, this population will include all proposed spaces as defined in the educational needs of the staff, the district, and the Board of Ed. So right now, we've got a building core circulation of about 27,000 square feet, total program area of about 77,000 square feet, which gets us to a total building area requirement of about 105, just over 105,000 square feet. Next slide, please. Mike's going to go through this initial conceptual design test fit, taking that square footage and putting it into the existing building.
So the narrative description that Mark reviewed with regard to the ed specs is then translated into graphic depiction. And this two plans that you see before you are the main and lower levels of the existing school. The color coding describes the types of spaces that are being out or laid out inside the existing building. And what we found was, based on the programmatic needs that are defined by the ed specs, Really, the only space that wouldn't be utilized is the storage space to the left-hand side of the lower plan. It represents a little over 7,000 square feet of space. This is, I think, fairly indicative of a grouping that you would see, but as Mark mentioned, it's not the final plan. There's certainly some tweaking that we would do. The state looks very carefully at the classroom size, and this is something that has changed over the recent years. The space standard that was referenced before has always been a little bit challenging to meet, but they have subsequently taken the statutory requirements and added another level based on information that was provided by a outside consultant that determined that the ideal standard classroom, for example, should be about 900 square feet. That's quite a large classroom relative to the types of schools that we see here in Connecticut. And they do allow you some flexibility one side or the other, but it's something that is relatively difficult to achieve, and that's led us to the 750 square foot classroom as a starting point for consideration. The classrooms have been distributed without specific guidance yet from the school. We expect to have additional analysis and consideration regarding adjacencies and proximity of things. We've already had some discussions in terms of how their special classes like the woodshop and the consumer science spaces interrelate with the rest of the school. And there's other specific aspects that we're trying to maintain without much modification, which we think ultimately will allow a greater investment into the program space. Some of those examples would be the main gymnasium, the music spaces, auditorium, cafeteria, and kitchen, and serving, which are all essentially adequate for the use of the school in the future as they are currently, and would remain essentially in the same location without significant modification. Go to the next slide, please. Oh, sorry.
Is it best to leave that slide and we can talk a little bit about so we can kind of go through just quickly. So our next steps with the state, once we recognized that the building was bigger than the space that we required for our ed specs, and we looked at how we were going to put the programming into the building, it didn't make sense to just take, let's say, the auxiliary gym, for example, and lop that off and demolish it for the sake of demolishing it and making the building fit to our space needs. And so further into our investigations, we kind of looked at opportunities to go back to the state and say, we've got an existing building, it's a little larger than we need, however, the layout isn't exactly perfect for us, and we're going to require additional space to make our programming work within the building. And we think that it's going to be a more affordable option at the end of the day for the state to allow us to renovate the building as is, as opposed to trying to figure something else out or reconfigure altogether. So we put together a space waiver letter that was presented to the state about a little over a week ago. And the purpose of the letter is to request an exemption from the space standards and seek a waiver for what we came up with these following reasons. So reason one was the existing space is not really conducive to modifications. So Mike, you want to talk a little bit about the single loaded corridors, some of the classroom size constraints and things like that?
Sure.
As they relate to the plan. Maybe if we put the plan back up. Thanks.
Yeah, so you can see, as those are familiar with the school, there's two corridors that the spaces are actually organized around. When you have a single loaded corridor, that is a corridor that is accessed from only one side, that's slightly less efficient than having it accessed from both sides. And we think that that contributes to some extent to some of the size overage. I would say, though, in general, the ratio of occupied space to corridor space and interior wall space is actually pretty efficient overall. But there are aspects that make it difficult to change. The configuration of the building as well, the V shape, dictates certain instances where the classrooms intersect on an angle, and so those spaces are resultant that have to be dealt with, which wouldn't necessarily be the issue if we were to build a brand new building. But I think in spite of that, actually one of the other contributing factors, I think, is the fact that we have the an auxiliary gymnasium, which is, if we were to build a middle school today, that would be a unique programmatic addition. The state, in addition to the size of classrooms, has also described what their expectations are for middle school, elementary school, and high school spaces. And certainly an auxiliary gym would be considered an amenity above and beyond what they would normally consider for reimbursement today. And the same is true for the auditorium. It's relatively unusual to have auditoriums with middle school programs. But I think, Mark, as you've already pointed out, the fact that these exist, it doesn't make any sense to take them down. And so we're looking for state consideration to maintain them and utilize them as they are.
Great, thank you. We talked about the classroom size constraints already. Another reason really is additional space requirements needed for technology education. Plainville Middle School has a large career program, and it, compared to the size that we see typically in other middle schools, it's considerably larger already. And so we want to promote that. We want to let the state know that it's an important program to Plainville. It's a very successful program in Plainville. And so things like, woodworking, robotics, broadcasting, culinary arts, there are a lot more things that we don't typically see, or maybe we see, but a very condensed version of that. And so part of that space waiver letter is to ask the state to recognize that the program is exceptional for Plainville, and that we wanted to maintain some of those larger spaces that they might not allocate in a brand new building. And then the last one, maybe Mike, you want to touch on the site itself?
The alternative would be to look at a brand new building, and I think in order to do that effectively, we would anticipate that the existing school would stay in operation. Even though the site is fairly large, much of it is actually impacted with wetlands, and so the ability to actually construct a new facility on the same site would be challenging, certainly with circulation, parking requirements, and then eliminating the wetland area. So for those reasons, and there's another one actually that's probably come to mind more recently with extreme volatility in the construction market. The cost associated with steel, concrete, really almost any building material, roofing has gone through the roof literally, and its procurement is many, many months out beyond what it normally would be. We believe that building an entirely new building from scratch would be significantly more expensive than taking advantage of the fact that you have an adequate structure, you have adequate enclosure, with the exception of updating the roof and windows. So you're actually taking advantage of a sound structure that exists on site versus building something entirely new and then knocking down the old building and paying for the demolition and removal.
So just next steps for us, once we hear back from the state on the waiver and what we think we're going to be able to get working with them, we'll identify, then we can really solidify the program and the ed specs, because we'll know just how much they'll allow. If we get the space waiver for everything we've asked for, the programming stays the same, and we know we've got a conceptual design we can work with, and we go straight to our cost estimators and start to put a budget to this project. If there are only a percentage of the waiver that we get back, then we know we've got some work to do. If they were to come back, which we don't think is the case, and say, we're not going to entertain any space waivers, then we've got more work to do on the programming side to constrict the programming to fit within the confines of the building, or have a different conversation. But we did just hear back. Mike had a conversation with the state today, and they are in receipt of the letter. They are reviewing it. They have different reviewers than who we presented it to, so we may have to just set up another meeting, although Mike has done a great job explaining to Kermit and the team where they need to be. So we think we're in a good place. It's good that they're reviewing it. They didn't call us and say, we're not entertaining this. Yeah, correct. Which could and has happened in the past. So we're very optimistic about moving forward in response to this space waiver. So I think that was it for our presentation. Steve, was there anything else you wanted to touch on? Are there any questions from the board?
Just if you could share just a timeline going forward, once we hear back and once we start costing it, what the next steps are, just, I think-
Right. So it's a great question. We tend to work backwards from our deadline, which would be our June 30th application date and a referendum date. Right now, the town has expressed an interest in potentially going to referendum prior to that June 30th date. Typically, we would want to do that before the kids are out of school. So we have a tentative referendum date on the calendar for April, May. We think that there are opportunities and conversations with the committee now to talk about a potential November referendum for, there's a couple of reasons, the reimbursement rate. We have to look at the reimbursement rate, what happens after June 30th. Our big deadline is the application, making sure that we get into the application for June 30th and get our Renovate as New status submitted just prior to that, correct? So two possibilities for referendum. It's going to be late spring, early summer, or it'll be fall. Does that help?
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if any board members have questions about the project at this point. I know it's still in the developmental phase, but, I think you gave a nice update about where we are at this time. I want to thank Amy Roberts and her staff, her entire staff, her administrative team, Rich Garudi, Ryan Cornelius, and the entire staff who gave input into the ed spec process.
Many hours invested
Yeah.
so far.
So, I think that really
I think there was one question here, Steve.
Yes, Ms. Clark.
You guys did a great presentation. We were just wondering if we thought of some kind of questions after, if we can have contact information available for them.
However you wanted to do
Email
that.
or
If
whatever.
you wanted to filter it through one person, Steve, if there's somebody on your team
One
that
person
wants
that we
to.
can
Oh,
contact.
for a follow-up question, I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
had
for
trouble
follow-up
hearing it.
question, in case there's more questions later.
Yeah, any questions could be funneled through me, and then I'll
Okay,
reach out.
perfect.
I work directly
Thank you
with
very
Mark.
much.
Yep, thank you.
Great, thank you. We good?
Thanks very much for coming out tonight.
You bet. Have a great night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd now like to convene the regular business meeting of the Plainville Board of Education. Cassandra, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we'll have a special presentation.
Thank you. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce one of our Plainville High School students, a junior, Jalen Thigpen, who's going to play What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong, one of my favorite musicians. And we're very grateful to have Jalen here with us tonight. Jalen, take it away. Thought you were going to give us a jazz solo at the end there. Jalen, that was awesome. I ran into Jalen actually at the vaccine clinic on a Saturday. He said, I've been practicing, and we had spoken about him coming and playing, and very talented young man. I've watched you grow. You were a lot smaller a few years ago, but very proud of the young man you've become and you're becoming, so keep up the great work. Thank you very much for performing. It's hard to do in front of a larger audience than normal, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done. That concludes my special presentations tonight. We have two Portrait Pioneers we're going to honor in March, but due to the length of tonight's meeting, we're going to hold off on those for tonight.
Okay, we're going to start with our approval of minutes. We have 7 sets of minutes this evening. If there are no objections or corrections to the minutes, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve items A through G, which includes minutes of the January 10th regular business meeting of the board, Minutes of the January 5th curriculum subcommittee meeting, minutes of the 3 budget sessions held on January 20th, 25th, and 27th, and the minutes from the board's special meeting of February 1st. Are there any concerns or questions? Do I have a motion to approve items A through G?
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes as circulated in our packet, marked A through G.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. No, they're just for me. Next, we're going to go to citizens' comments. If you would like to address members of the Plainville Board of Education, you are welcome to do so. You will have 3 minutes to voice the matters at hand or your area of concern. Does anyone wish to address the Plainville Board of Education? Thank you.
Benjamin Getterman, 5 Dickman Road, sorry. I have 3 separate issues that I will be speaking about tonight, since a lot has gone on since the January regular board meeting. First of all, the mask mandate will be ending on February 28th, and there's been quite a few discussions on the town Facebook pages, including comments by the chair encouraging people to come here tonight. I hope when it comes time to vote, you will use all the recommendations and guidance from the state DPH and our local health director. Your decisions impact the entire community. Second, the budget. I am not a fan of this budget, but I do support it. It covers the bare minimum for our students, and that's about it. We all know that once it goes to the town council, it is going to be cut, and I don't see where we can absorb the cuts without losing vital student services. I also need to point out that once again, I am baffled by the 2 of the board members who stated that they think the budget is too high, but can't tell us what should be cut to lower it. If you can't be bothered to fulfill your duties as elected officials, maybe it's time to step down. We need people that can bring ideas. Lastly, I'd like to talk about Ms. Buchanan's statement and questioning of the banners hanging on the high school. After listening to her statement a couple times, I realized I didn't have enough knowledge to have an educated opinion on this subject. So I dove into it and did some research. She made several references to the progressive flag. Immediately, I realized that the progressive flag doesn't exist. It is called the Progress flag, and that has evolved from the original Pride flag from the 1970s. I found about the best explanation of the evolution of the Pride flag that I could, and I'm going to read that to you now. It's quick. The first known Pride flag, sewn by Gilbert Baker, debuted at the June 1978 San Francisco Gay Freedom Day Parade. Baker was urged by Harvey Milk, an early gay activist and firebrand, to construct a flag to symbolize the dignity of what was then called the gay community. The first iteration of the flag contained 8 stripes, each a separate color of the rainbow plus hot pink. Demand for the flag increased after Milk's assassination in 1978, and hot pink was removed due to the unavailability of the fabric in that color. The following year, San Francisco Pride organizers removed another stripe. The 6-stripe version, which with each stripe having a separate meaning, would become the historical standard of the Pride flag for the next several decades. There have always been variations of the Pride flag, with each version reflecting our history while striving for increased awareness of our diverse community. For example, during the height of the AIDS epidemic, some flags were made with a black stripe to memorialize those who succumbed to the disease. In just the past 4 years, there have been 2 major changes to the flag, both of which reflect the desire of the queer community to become more inclusive. First, during Pride Month 2017, the City of Philadelphia unveiled a rainbow flag and with black and brown stripes added to the traditional 6 to represent people of color in the queer community whose voices and concerns were often disregarded. And even more recently, the flag evolved once again to embrace trans members of the community through the inclusion of light blue, pink, and white stripes. These stripes reflect the transgender pride flag created by Monica Helms in 1999. The immutability of pride flags is a testament to the strength and diversity of the broader queer community. They are not centralized and have no leader, and our understanding of the world, ourselves, and each other is constantly evolving. While many people recognize only the six-stripe rainbow flag because it is anchored in their own experience, the evolution of pride flags encourages all of us to keep examining who we are, what we stand for, and what work still needs to be done. I can't help but thinking back to this campaign over the summer, that the issue with the brown and the black colors on the banners stem from her previous statements that equity somehow leads to critical race theory. This isn't about the school pushing a political ideology like she stated. The banners represent inclusiveness and acceptance for all, and that is the message that the students want to communicate to everyone and to live by. I'm proud to live in a community that is inclusive to all, especially when it is driven by our youth. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Catherine Curtis, 15 Maiden Lane. Tonight, I would like to speak on two matters that are very important to me. First, I would like to address the mask mandate and why I believe we need to keep it in place in our schools at least until spring. I am speaking to you as a mother, as an educator, as a conscientious individual, and as a voter. We are all members of this society, and as such, we have a moral and ethical obligation to each other, a responsibility to look out for our mutual well-being and protect the vulnerable in this town. We are all tired of COVID, tired of isolation, tired of masks, and yet COVID is not over. Wanting it over does not make it so. And in Plainville, where vaccination rates, especially amongst elementary students, are not as high as they should be, it makes no sense to drop the mandates now. It is still winter, it is still cold and flu season. We are already struggling to find substitutes. We need to keep masks in place for the time being. As our board, you have a responsibility to protect our students and staff, and by extension, our community. I know there is a lot of political pressure to end the masks, but I am asking you to rise above politics and think about the health and safety of our community. Secondly, as Ben referred to, it has come to my attention that there are those who are upset about the banners that hang prominently at Plainville High School. I love them. I was so proud of this town when I saw them hanging in the fall, because I saw a district ready to welcome kids of all races and genders and religions and sexual identities, all kids embodied in those banners. I'm curious why some residents are upset. Why would anyone who purports to care about children have a problem with a symbolic gesture that says, "We care, we accept you, we see you"? Why? We have to think long and hard about what kind of town we want to be. Do we want to send the message that all are welcome or not? It seems to me that calling this banner a progressive flag is revealing a fear that some in our society have about those folks who have long been marginalized in this country. There is no other reason to be concerned about Plainville's branding. Either we show our kids that they all belong, or we send a clear message that we are not a safe place for all kids. Is that the message we want to send? Acknowledging our Black and brown students is not being political. It is not devaluating our white kids. It is recognizing that we need to do better for marginalized kids and their families so that all kids can learn and grow safely in this town. I have long used this analogy with my own 4 children, talking about love, and I think it applies here. Love isn't finite. There isn't not enough to go around. It's not pizza that we can run out of. So we need, I lost my place. Loving our kids that are prominently represented on those banners does not mean we love our other kids any less. Thank you.
Laura Meehan for Orchard Lane. Good evening, everyone. After watching the Board of Ed meetings this year, I have grown increasingly concerned with the unexpected and negative focus and confusion surrounding the pride flag at PHS. In board meetings this year, Rachel Buchanan has shared these opinions with the board, and I quote, "If we are going to put Black and brown people, then we need yellow people. We need everyone in between to be fairly represented. And also, I would like to receive an education. Why that flag? What was not inclusive about the original flag? These statements are shocking to me. Yellow people is a very derogatory term for Asian Americans. In the past 2 years, hate crimes against Asian Americans has spiked over 150% in the US. And as the mother of 2 biracial Asian children, I can't put into words how disgusted I was with this racist slur. Pride flags have always been seen as progressive symbols representing the queer community in their fight for equity. This is nothing new. Flags change. The current version of our American flag, 27th version. Within the LGBTQ community, the struggle for equity and inclusion persists today. Within queer spaces, people of color, non-binary individuals, and trans men and women are often excluded and discriminated against. In recent years, many within the queer community have felt that the 6-stripe flag represents mostly white, cis, gay men and is no longer a good representation of the struggles of our community. Since 2017, schools and organizations have begun using new pride flags in an effort to be more inclusive of the expansive breadth of identity within our queer community. As nationwide bullying has been steadily declining in our schools, it has stayed the same for the queer students of color. In the United States, 2 in 5 LGBTQ students of color report being bullied or harassed in school because of their race. This is true for our queer Black, Hispanic, Asian, and Native students. These students experience more harassment than their cis white gay peers. They have more missed days of school, they have lower GPAs, and they have lower self-esteem. When our schools show support for our marginalized queer students, they participate more in school activities, they have fewer missed days of school, higher graduation rates, and hear fewer homophobic and transphobic remarks in their schools. Displaying the inclusive flag at PHS is a promise to our students that we are not simply pink-washing our brand to boost our image. We truly recognize the unique experiences and struggles within their intersectionality. There's nothing divisive about our commitment for inclusion and support of our racial and gender minority students. Some board members may prefer the 6-stripe version of the flag from 1978, but they do not speak for all people of color or the LGBTQ community. In 2022, we recognized that more than ever, our trans, non-binary, and LGBTQ students of color need our love and support. If we were to remove these stripes from our banner at PHS, what message would that send to our students in the community? The More Colors banner at PHS shows our students that our support is not superficial. We see them, we hear them, and we care about them. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nolan Meehan, and I'm in 6th grade. When I heard that one of the Board of Ed members wanted to take down the Progress Pride flag, I felt disappointed. People at school have made fun of me for being Asian, and when I heard that Board of Ed member use a racial slur against Asians, I was shocked and hurt. It is important to have a flag with the black and brown stripes because it represents all of us in the Plainville schools. The black and brown stripes represent all racial minorities, and this is important to me. My friends and I have talked about the flag at PHS, and we are all upset at the thought of it being changed or taken down. Even though the pride flag is not our school, just knowing that there is a flag that represents us makes us feel safer. It makes us feel like we can trust the adults at school more. If there was a Progress Pride flag at MSP, it would make me feel safer. I would like to ask Ms. Roberts if we could hang a Progress Pride flag outside our school. When I see the flag at PHS, it makes me feel happy and welcomed. It makes me feel like the world has changed to be better. I hope the flag never gets taken down. Thank you.
Hello, Jamie Patillo, 7 Cleveland Street. To the adults in this room, thank you for all you do. You impact all of the children in our community. Mr. LePage, you stated last month that we need to stand up for our children, and that's what I'm here to do today. My children deserve you to hear what is happening and how schools are currently operating. Bear in mind, I have discussed all of this with the teachers, nurses, and administrators. Nothing is a surprise. Last year, my first grader was told by the school nurse that if she had a doctor's note, she would be allowed to drink water. Otherwise, she had to wait until the class had a mask break. So I guess this has improved. The restriction has been lifted. In December, there was a mix-up and the school quarantined my wrong child. At this time, I had reached out to Mr. LePage and asked him to call me. 3 days later, I received an email. He was rather busy to talk. Almost a month ago, my daughter was asked to write 3 words to describe herself. She wrote serious, wild, and honest. She was then asked to draw a picture and describe one. She chose honest and wrote, I do not like feelings, I do not like teachers, and I do not like school. A second grader who does not like school anymore. This teacher that enters her classroom is unknown to her, except that she comes in to talk about feelings. My child has stated over and over to me, my friends feel the same way I do, but I'm the only one brave enough to write it down for the teachers to collect. Most recently in a second grade class, my child had a chair thrown at her. She came home and told me all about it. And as honest as she is, she told me that she also pushed the boy away. So, in a classroom where additional ruler lessons are being implemented, why are these things happening? Meanwhile, in a 5th grade classroom, my son is getting some support for assistance in reading. On a year so focused on SEL, social emotional learning, we provide this extra support at a table in the hall so that the students can be seen as classes and students traveling the hall can pick on them as their peers pass by and hear them working on their spelling group. In 5th grade, it's a treat on a special Friday once in a while to have a science lesson. Otherwise, science is not happening. My 10-year-old came home a few weeks ago very upset. He was disappointed because his iReady reading score was not high enough, that his teacher was going to get in trouble for it. Seriously? And in a time when we're talking about SEL and what is best for young students, a teacher should never apply that pressure to a student. She then asked if he could retake it. Absolutely not, was my response. Additional supports would be helpful in teaching students to interact both at structured and unstructured times. Indoor recess with students sitting isolated at their computers or watching a video is not the best practice. I have a child with severe allergies. In the month of January, I have been contacted 3 different occasions regarding my child's medication label, forms, and medication needed at school. This is unnecessary. 1 review of her medications and paperwork should be sufficient. At this point, my next step is meeting with the allergist to allow my child to carry her EpiPen. Unfortunately, that's the only way she will feel safe. Please, as you move forward, adapt to new policies, examine what is working and what needs to change, listen to the children, hear what they have to say, visit the classrooms, talk with parents, and again, most importantly, listen. At any time you need a glimpse of what is happening in your schools, just ask. Both my children and myself would be glad to give you a sneak peek of what is really happening.
Happy Valentine's Day. Cheryl Provost, 6 Overlook Drive. Here tonight with comments on a couple items. First, thank you to the superintendent, the board, the staff, everybody who worked with care and attention to put this year's budget together. It's a lot of work, it's a huge undertaking, a huge responsibility, but it is so very important. Our students, teachers, and staff have had a trying couple of years, and it is important that we as a community show our respect for what they've endured by supporting the superintendent's budget. We owe it to the Plainville Community Schools to give them the resources they need to move forward. Outside of contractual obligations, this budget is actually far too lean, but I urge you all to support it tonight. Let's remember also that strong schools are one of the most important metrics used for home prices and values in the community. So really, we benefit ourselves when we benefit our schools. Please support this budget tonight. My second comments are some that I can't believe as a graduate of Plainville High School, as a parent of graduates of Plainville High School, that I'd ever be making in this town. So to the board member who has a problem with inclusion based on comments from last month's meeting, how very disheartening, disappointing that someone serving on the Board of Education is not supportive of inclusion of all the students in town. As BOE members, it is your duty, to the extent of your power, to do what benefits students. To be concerned about a brand being too inclusive is actually terrifying to me. She was okay with the old pride flag, but the inclusion of the new flag is divisive. Maybe we have a misunderstanding on the definition of divisive. Inclusion of everyone is kind of the opposite of divisive. I kind of wondered how Kentucky and Vermont might have felt if they were told that the changing of the original U.S. flag from 13 to 15 stars and stripes was divisive. Or the next change, maybe Louisiana and Ohio might have had a problem. Our United States flag has changed 27 times since the original 13 stars and stripes, each time to be inclusive. I would ask that the members of this Board of Education respect all the students in this town, and that you do the job you are supposed to do and make each one of them feel welcome in our schools. Thank you. Thank you again for your work on the budget. I'm sorry I can't stay for the whole meeting. It's not that I'm just talking and leaving. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
Danny Carrier, 270 Camp Street. There's only really one reason I'm here today, and it's for my kids and the masks. And I hope that if you guys are actually given the chance to vote on whether our kids have masks on in school or not, that you guys will let it go. Nobody's ever saying that you can't wear a mask. Anybody who wants to wear a mask is very well free to do so. I think this country was founded on freedom and the right to choose for one person's way of living, and that's the way I feel. And when you make your decision, another point that I would have is I know everybody says follow the science, what the metrics are, but are we looking at where our kids' test scores are, or what their learning environment is like, or their mental health issues that are coming out of the way that our schools have been for the last, I say 2 years, but a year and a half, since we lost half a year. I have 3 kids in school, and I know personally that they would rather not wear their mask, but they're going to do what they're told. So at this point, I feel like the masks have just become a symbol of politics in general. I don't see how the health risk for the few has to mandate everybody to do one thing when you always have the choice to do what you want to do. I do thank the superintendent for putting out that survey. I'm interested to see where that ended up. And I guess the last thing I would say is that my 5-year-old, it's been a year and a half, well, I always say a year and a half, but 2 years, 2.5 years since he's been in school, and he really doesn't know what school is without a mask. It's interesting. So that's really all I have to say. I hope you guys drop the mandate if you're even allowed to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dana Snell. I am at 18 Newton Avenue, and I won't be before you long. A lot of what people have already said is my position. You have a responsibility as a board to do what's in the best interest of the children of this community. It's called the duty of care. It means that you're responsible to do what's in the best interest and not necessarily your personal beliefs or opinions. You have to go beyond that. I sat in the meeting in regards to the Board of Education and listened to a couple of people on the board indicate that they didn't like the budget. My understanding is that there was enough time for you guys to do some research. And as constituents, we pay for the superintendent to do this work. And if we're not pleased with what they're doing, then my expectation as a citizen is that you would do your research, make suggestions and recommendations so that we don't spend a lot of time going back and forth. Our kids need to be educated, they need to be loved and supported. It is unfortunate that some people on the board were concerned about grant money and money we don't even have to pay that takes impact on our income, what we pay for, because maybe there's something in it that they don't like, that they were not able to articulate. Very frustrating. Respect the investment that we make in you as board members by doing your due diligence and making sure that you take care of kids. Now, this whole thing about a flag and black and brown kids is more than my 3 minutes of time. So I'm not even going to go there, but to say that it is, that if you decide that saying one group of people, black lines on a flag, makes somebody else feel bad, how bad do you think I feel? Because I'm black all day. I'm from Plainville. I graduated from Plainville High. My mother graduated from Plainville High. My grandfather was born. Plainville ain't blacker than Dana. I'm black all day. How dare you? And I know how important it is to be in a town where there's not a lot of you, that you are valued and important. You have a responsibility for the care of these children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laura Montana, 54 Bel Air Drive. I would like to address several topics that have been concerning me as a community member, as well as a parent of students who attend Plainville schools. I follow the Plainville Board of Education meetings and intend to continue to do so to educate myself and to advocate for students and staff when appropriate and possible. First, as Board of Education members, you have been selected and entrusted with the school budget process. Approving a budget that is fiscally responsible and supportive to our students and staff is one of the most important tasks that you have. I have followed the budget process closely, and although I believe there are items that could be added to our budget to create more opportunities, I do support the current budget as presented. There would be many benefits to our students in using some of the new grant money to create more enrichment programs to ensure all students are adequately challenged and able to reach their highest potential. Second, as Board of Education members, you have been entrusted to support all students and staff in our school community. The staff and students in our schools are asking for more support for our students in the LGBTQ community. Most of us here are not in the schools every day, so we need to listen to our staff and allow them to be our guide as to what is needed and appropriate. The flags and banners being displayed in and around our schools in different forms are ever-changing, with the focus on including and accepting all people and the diversity of the broader community. I hope we will continue to support all of our students and staff by continuing to provide this visual affirmation as well as policies, curriculum, clubs, and activities to support our diverse students and faculty. We need to educate ourselves, examine our biases, and evolve. Lastly, I ask that the board refrain from voting tonight on whether to continue to require masks in schools. I believe it is premature to vote at the board level, since the superintendent has indicated that the meeting with the Department of Public Health and Connecticut State Department of Education for guidance is taking place tomorrow. In that meeting, he has stated he will be receiving additional information, guidance, and details. It is important to have that information before making a decision. This is not a decision that should be taken lightly, and it should not be dictated by an individual's opinions. It should be simple. Our town either meets the benchmarks for removing masks or it doesn't. Thank you.
Hi, Amy Chassie, 24 Sandstone. I was not prepared to come tonight, so I don't have everything pre-typed. But something was brought to my attention this week. I'm the one that posted on Facebook. I just wanted parents to have a conversation with their kids about mental health and the masks. You know, I'm fine. I'm for masks if you want to wear them, if you're comfortable wearing them, if that's your security blanket. But I think that it's bringing a serious mental health issue with our children and a different level of bullying. It's really sad, the conversations I had with some 8th graders this weekend that are not comfortable taking off their masks because they look better with them on. That's not a safety issue, that's not a health issue, that's insecurity. I believe in raising kids that are strong, right-willed, minded, emotional, and these masks are just causing more problems. So I just ask that when you're given that ability to lift the mask mandate.
Thank you.
Anna Begazzo of 9 Merzen Lane. I also don't have a great speech. I just wanted to come up and express my support to make masks optional for our children. We have been following the state guidelines, and as parents have respectfully going along. It is time to drop the mandate and let the parents decide what is best for their children. Thank you. Have a good night.
Mike Harlan, 56 Linden Street, Plainville. I'm totally against the masks. I am for freedom of choice. I think if parents want to vaccinate their children and they think that's the best thing, they should. If they want them to wear masks and they think that that works, then my child not wearing a mask doesn't put them in jeopardy, especially if they've had 2 vaccines and a booster, right? One of the big things is the CDC recently coming out and saying that these things we're pretending to wear, right, like below our nose, they don't work. It's all just for show. So the reality that these things are actually stopping things, it's nonsense, right? So unless you guys are gonna go like fit our kids with proper masks and make sure they have them on correctly all day, I don't think that's gonna create a great learning environment for those people, right? Probably be pretty difficult. I'm really tired of my son coming home from school when his mask gets to here and his teacher yelling at him by doing this to make sure that he knows his place in class. It's hypocritical. It's a double standard. It's unfair to them. I train a lot of early childhood teachers, K, first, second, third. The developmental growth that is being stunted because of these masks is incredible. Teachers can't talk to their kids. Kids can't read their lips. There's no back and forth, which is important in that K through 3. It's just nonsense. Lastly, I own a business. We service hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people every single day. Some people wear masks. They feel comfortable doing that. Most of them don't. Some have vaccines. Some don't. The rate of spread in our business is less than it was in the schools. These people are traveling everywhere, going out to dinner, doing whatever they want with their life. Rate of spread far slower than these schools. These do nothing. It's a game, it's for show. Please stop hurting our kids because of these masks.
Hello, I'm Julian. I'm just I don't have a script or anything, I just wanted to say. But I've asked a lot of kids in my grade whether or not they would still wear a mask even after, say we do, not have to wear a mask and it's optional. I asked a lot of kids and they still said that they would wear the mask, not because they're concerned, but because they're concerned of kids, making fun of how they look, or they're just not confident in their face. So I'm all with the option, but I think that a big portion of it is how kids feel about themselves, and that, we need to stop having masks as a shield to make ourselves feel better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christine Carrier, 270 Camp Street. I have 3 children in the Plainville school system, all 3 at the elementary level, and I strongly believe that the mask wearing should no longer be mandatory in our schools. I wish I could stand here and list to you all the reasons that go through my mind about why I feel this way, but instead I'll just share a short conversation I had with my children last night. My 9-year-old daughter was expressing her frustration about having to wear a mask at school. She said that what bothers her the most is that people can't see how you're feeling at school. It bothers her that if she's feeling upset or down about something, she can't see her friends' smiles when they're trying to make her feel better. And then my 5-year-old chimes in. He's very proud of himself, and he says that it's okay because he can tell if someone's smiling if their cheeks go up. And maybe they're sad if their head hangs down. He then continues to tell me that he can tell who his friends are at school by their hairstyles and where they sit on the rug. As cute as he was saying this, it broke my heart that this little boy has never been in a school setting without having to wear a mask. The only school environment he knows is one where no one can see your face, no one can see your smiles or your sadness. This current learning environment is not what I want for my children. Our kids deserve better. They deserve a better learning environment. They deserve for you to consider everything if you get the chance to make a decision about whether or not the mask mandate stays in place. You have the chance to be their heroes and free them from the masks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Salam, 114 South Washington. I wasn't planning to give a speech, but I listened to everyone talking about the masks. And I believe we have a war against germs. So it can be politics, it is just science, pure science. And why it is debatable? Why don't we leave it to the Board of Education they know what's going on in the schools, and they know how many kids are vaccinated. Is there some kids are sick or not? And do we need to follow rules or not? It's not optional. It is up to the people who know better than us, and we trust them. And we need to give our kids an impression of trust the people who in charge. So if we tell them, hey, don't trust the Board of Education or your teacher, that's a negative message to our kids. And thanks God we are not living in an environment that we need to wear worse than masks. But to respect and to follow the orders is something we need to fight in this war. So I think it's a matter of trust we need to give to our people who are in charge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Lauren Incognito, 123 William Street. Like many people, I myself was not planning on being here tonight. But as a social worker, I'm hearing certain buzzwords that are concerning me. 2 days a week, I'm a town director in another town, and 2 days a week I go over to the high school and I provide therapeutic services. And what we are seeing is exorbitant rates of mental health issues that are affecting our kids, not because of masks, but because of all of the things that have come about with COVID and with the pandemic and with being home and then with being back. So we have all of these social and emotional issues that these kids are struggling with. The masks are just one small component. So I'm hearing things tonight about kids who don't want to take the mask down because they're afraid of being bullied or they're afraid of their face being seen. That's a mental health issue, folks. And that's come about because of what we've endured these last 2 years. I would be more concerned about that. I mean no offense when I know it seems like I'm jumping, so I mean no offense when I mention these iReady tests and the standards that you want your teachers to maintain. I understand that. But I think we need to slow down a little bit and let's address the mental health issues. Let's address the emotional stuff happening. Let the teachers do that. We can catch up with the tests and the reading levels and the math. We can catch up with that. We're going to miss the opportunity if we don't address the mental health stuff. As a parent, my kids are vaccinated. Do I want them to continue wearing the masks? Sure. I mean, I wear mine still in the store. Sometimes I forget, but you know, I think that again, this is going to come down to parental choice, parental comfort level. I'm more concerned with the state of my kids and their mental health. That tops anything for me, and I feel like we can catch up with the other stuff, but we're gonna fail big if we don't address the mental health stuff that has come about with COVID. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
Hi, my name is Barbara Polkowski, and I'm at 7 Weatherstone Ridge Road in Plainville. I wasn't planning on speaking. We got here late, but just listening about the masks. I am not for the masks, and these do not help, and you hear doctors saying that all the time. It's not stopping the spread of anything, and there is no scientific proof that it is, and we don't know what is the long-term effect of these masks. There are studies how it is affecting our children, and my children do not want to wear masks. It should be our choice. Like one gentleman said, you want to be vaccinated, you can get vaccinated. If you're vaccinated, you don't have to worry about spreading COVID. I just think it's a personal choice, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the board? Does anyone else wish to address the board?
Hello, my name is Henry Poster of 14 Bruce Avenue. I'm a 5th grade student, and I would like to address how students actually feel in school with the mask. So, students struggle. It's not exactly easy having a piece of cloth on your face for like 8 hours a day. You barely get mask space. I feel like if you want to wear a mask, that should be optional. It shouldn't you shouldn't be forced, because it really doesn't work. Hartford already removed the mask, effective, I believe, March 1st. Why not remove it here? It's the same thing. Hartford students go to Plainville too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anina Consalvo, 5 Court. I just wanted to say that I'm against masks, and I have talked to some of my friends, and a lot of them have said that when masks are removed, they don't want to take theirs off, that they're embarrassed of their face. I also never see my teachers without a mask on. When I finally see them without a mask on, if they need to take off their mask for a drink of water, they also look so different than what I think. The masks should be removed. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the Board of Education? Does anyone else wish to address the Plainville Board of Education? Does anyone else wish to address the Plainville Board of Education? Okay, I guess we're all set. Thank you all for your comments. We're going to move on to the council liaisons report, which was provided to us via email, so we all received a copy of it. We can go on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. It's my pleasure tonight, and I appreciate the students who are here for the middle school of Plainville to assist with the presentation. I'd like to introduce our leadership team at the middle school, Principal Amy Roberts, and Assistant Principal Ryan Cornelius, and Interim Assistant Principal Rich Garudi. If you could come up with and introduce, we'll start your presentation and introduce your team, and I know your students are going to be sharing a presentation as well. This has been the most patient group of students who have had to wait the longest of any board meeting in history, so thank you very much.
Okay, great. So at this time, I'm going to ask our students to stand up. And first of all, thank you so much for having us all here. We're really excited to be with you tonight. And we just thought that we wanted to showcase one of the many special clubs that we have at MSP. And the best way to do that was to have our students come and present to you. So if Faith could come over, and this is pretty loud, so you don't have to go right up next to it.
Like this? Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Faith Posner, and this is Miss Gradicki, and she's the advisor of our ASL club. Good evening. Introducing the MSP ASL club. Members meet weekly. We learn about ASL and the deaf culture. We have many goals, teaching and modeling, including and sharing. This experience has opened our eyes, our hearts, and our minds to make an impact for our school and community. ASL has grown our confidence, friendships, and togetherness. Thank you for having us. And together. Okay. Thank you for having us here tonight.
That was awesome.
You guys could head
Nice
out.
job.
You've been very patient. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ms. Gradicki.
Okay, so we are excited to share with you, despite the many challenges of this year, we're really excited to share with you all of the great things happening at the middle school. And our students have been doing so many amazing and outstanding things. Our teachers have been just amazing, working hard and bringing all of their skills to our students. So we are going to move on with our traditional 3 rings, just to let you know that we are still all focused on the 3 goals of students, teaching, and learning through that lens of equity, social emotional learning, and mastery, all 3 very important to us. We began the year putting together a school improvement plan so that we could track how our teachers are doing, how our students are doing, the impact we're having on their progress, success, and learning. And we're still working on that and really excited to share with you the growth and the progress that we've made in these 3 areas. Next slide, please. I'm not going to read these slides, but they are here for you if you want to delve a little bit deeper into our action plan. But our 3 focus areas where we had goals for student growth were in literacy, math, and our school climate. If you could move ahead just to right after our school climate slide. So we have literacy, math, school climate, and then one more. Okay. So I know we've all been hearing a lot about social and emotional learning and equity as things that we are spending time and focus on in our schools. As middle school teachers and educators, our teachers know that this has always been a part of what middle school teachers do. This is not anything new at all. Calling it social and emotional learning is a way that we talk about it because some students don't have the skills that they need to engage in learning. So part of our job is to teach them, and it's not just the math and literacy, but also how to be appropriately social. And as you know, that's something we've always had to teach in middle school. This is the age where students do not know necessarily how to interact with each other because they're changing and growing and moving from young children to adolescence. And it is a time where they are not always able to regulate themselves in an appropriate way, which is why we all get to go to work every day and work on these things with your children. As far as emotions, our students come into school in all different states each and every day, how they're feeling, what they're bringing from home. And sometimes they're not able to access their learning because they're not regulated enough to be present in the classroom and engage with the learning that we're providing. So when we talk about SEL, we're talking about helping them get to the place they need to be to access the curriculum. Next slide, please. And of course, I couldn't go without saying that this goes for our teachers as well and our staff at MSP. At the beginning of the year, or it was not quite the exact beginning, in November, we did a survey. And one of the things we asked them was, how do they feel when they come to school each day? And, if you look at these words, the larger the word, the more people answered that particular feeling. So I see, overwhelmed and stressed, frustrated. I see some great things too, respected and happy and appreciated. But it's our work as a community to support them in this difficult work that they've been doing. And that is part of the reason we want to support their students. We want to support them and their students with social and emotional learning and support. Next slide, please. So this year we got a little bit more serious about tracking what impact are we actually having on our students. And one of the ways that we were able to do that is by administering a test called the DESA. It's a standardized empirical social and emotional competence assessment. And for the first round of this, we did one in the fall and one in the winter. It's just 7 questions, not asked to the students, but asked to their teachers. And teachers identify students that maybe need some support in either those social interactions or regulating their emotions, or they're typical. So we had a nice big group fall in that typical range, or they're really strong in all these different skills. As you can see, moving from our fall data to our winter, we had a drop-off. So, what are the things that we're doing that created that drop-off from 23.2% to 13% of our students in need? Once we do the original 7 questions, you would probably feel like that doesn't really give you enough to really help support a student or know what's going on, and it's not. We do ask our teachers to go back and do a 72 questionnaire survey on their students, and then that data goes to their school counselors and our SEL support tutor and to the administrators so that we can work with these students in developing and improving those skills that they need to better access the curriculum and just act appropriately in middle school. Next slide, please. We didn't want to just ask teachers what they were seeing in front of them. We also asked our students what they were seeing and feeling at school directly. So they took a survey called the Qualtrics survey. And this is just a snapshot of data. This isn't for the whole district. This is just the middle school of Plainville. And we did see that we had some areas for growth here. And some areas where, students don't always want to come to school. They don't always feel like students in the school respect the adults around them. And, but on the flip side, So, there's some areas that we really want to work on and improve for our students. We want them to be happy and feel supported by their peers and feel like people respect each other. Next slide. This is the whole school data. Yeah. So some of the areas of strength that really made me proud is that, a greater percentage of our students, these numbers are higher, feel like they do have adults at the school that respect them and that are there to support them. They have parents at home that respect them and support them. They feel like they have folks that they can go to for that type of support. And so we feel like those students that don't feel that way or we know exactly who those students are, and they met with their school counselors and they joined groups to help support them to make sure that there's no student sitting in our school feeling like they don't know what to do or how to reach out for help when they're not feeling the way they should at school. Next question, please. So that was a little bit more of a formal survey. We also sent out just a Google form questionnaire to hear directly from our students. And they had a few concerns. They're worried about the safety on our stairs at different times of passing. They wanted to improve the aesthetic atmosphere of MSP. I love that one. They wanted a wider variety of after-school clubs. They wanted to improve the way they act with each other in our hallways and less structured areas, as well as some other, passing time. Over 60% of our students want to be involved in making these improvements happen. And Mr. Cornelius started the Student Climate Committee, where students have joined and are helping to make these changes, many of which we have already tried to implement and help, especially with the stairs in the hallways. Other things that we've been doing to try to help support our students, our beginning of the year assembly and PBIS lessons with all of our teachers, whole school lessons. We have done several of those this year, as well as lessons in different classes, including sexual harassment and kind of a reset lesson when we came back in January to get everybody back on the same page. Another thing that we've done is really get back into the after-school clubs, sports, and all the other fun PTC events that make a middle school a middle school. So one of those, and these slides are going to go really quickly, Mr. Ross. So we have our next slide here. If you go on one more, please. We have teachers implementing social and emotional lessons as part of their curriculum. So this was in a language arts class. Ms. Basinskis here had to be your own Valentine and show yourself some love. The students made hearts. It was a really fun activity, but the real process behind it was getting them to think about setting goals for high school, college applications, interviews for jobs, helping support them in those skills that they'll need to build and show as they move forward throughout their career. We've also had quite a few of our teachers. The whole school really uses what we call the mood meter, and you can see there's all sorts of different feelings, and I'm sure everyone in the room is somewhere on there. You can find a feeling that you might be feeling. When our students come in and they're in what we call the red or blue quadrants, when they identify themselves there, it's often very difficult for them to focus on learning because they're either feeling very upset, sad, hopeless, or angry and enraged, upset. We need to help them, or we feel we need to help them move over into those yellow and green quadrants so that they can regulate themselves and access the learning that's the real reason they're with us all day. So how do we do that? Some of our teachers have gotten really proficient at collecting data about this. So we have, if we could go to the next slide, please. So in our art classrooms, teachers periodically, when they have a specific lesson, they have done a quick second survey right before class starts and at the end. And as you can see here, we had students in the red and blue zone drop from 29.4% of the class to 15.6% by the end of the class. And what they're doing in there, next slide, please, is, this activity was calming watercolor dots. So it was a fun activity. The lights were a little bit lower, there's relaxing music on, and kids feel better, self-reported by the end of that class. Next slide, please. Another one of our Unified Arts classes chose to track this data as well, and in one of our music classes with Ms. Diaz, she also did the mini survey right before she had her lesson and at the end, and had students in red or blue zone drop from 28% to 18%, which is pretty great by the end of a class. People were feeling a lot better. Next slide, please. Which leads me to all the fun things our students are able to do again and get back to normal. So our band students are getting ready to march in the Memorial Day Parade. I already hear them practicing, and they're looking forward to putting together a spring concert for us. Next slide, please. We were able to hold our Veterans Day celebration, and we're back to having all of our sports once again. So right now, you see pictures of our cheerleaders and one of our basketball teams, but we'll have cross country and track, baseball and softball as soon as we get to the spring. Next slide, please. Our PTC has been wonderful and supportive. They put together a bingo night, next slide, and a paint night, both of which were very well attended. And I keep hearing students ask me for more. When are we going to do it again? When are we going to do it again? Because they got to be at the school, not doing work, but really having fun with their friends. Next slide, please. Just a sampling of all the other clubs we were able to put into place. Trash and fashion is a really popular one. We've never done it before, but students make their own outfits. They design them from concept to finish using 95% recycled materials collected from teachers or their families in the building. We also have ski, and they learn a little bit about the environment and recycling at the same time. Ski Club is always popular and has their last trip, I believe, this coming Friday. Cooking Club is wonderful. Students bring us treats after that, so we love when that one runs. Of course, you saw our wonderful American Sign Language Club. And then for our more theatrical kids, we have Broadway Bound and Drama Club with Miss Santiago and Mrs. Butler. So our students, next slide please, are really starting to feel like they're getting the full middle school experience this year. Our MSP robotics team is still just going strong and having fun and success in that different way. And the morning announcements happen every single day. Mr. Garudi's been doing a good job bringing the fun to the morning announcements, which we all love to watch now. So I'm going to be sad when it's back to me doing the morning announcements because I'm not quite as exciting as Mr. Garudi, but that's okay. And so, you know, the real reason when we talk about doing SEL work or working on social skills and emotions is because we do see a correlation when we look at our students' ratings on the DESA, how their teachers see them acting and feeling in class, and where their iReady scores are in the classroom, which shows us that they're growing and progressing, you know, in the way that we want them to. And on that note, I am going to turn it over to Mr. Garudi so that he could give you a few highlights from our departments before Mr. Cornelius delves into a little bit of data. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Roberts. Good evening, Plainville Board of Education members. Today, my goal is to briefly show you a couple of highlights of what a typical day at the Middle School of Plainville looks like. Next slide, please. We're going to start in our social studies. This curriculum is currently being utilized and prepared by our teachers, synthesizing Common Core and state standards, and they are using the medium of inquiry-based learning. By doing so, their goal and aim is to make sure that students are actively engaged, as well as they are asking objective questions about the current curriculum that they're looking at. In 6th grade, students start off, that you'll see, please go back to the previous slide. In 6th grade, we're currently looking at ancient civilizations. So students really start back at the beginning of our written history, and that's something that you'll see on the next slide is kind of alludes to that. In 7th grade, students primarily focus on different world regions and how they have affected us culturally economically, and of course socially as well. 7th grade also does a phenomenal job of preparing students for the modern day and internet age, where they are focused on research skills and make sure that they know the difference between different types of sources and what is credible and what is not. Next slide, please. This is a primary example of a 6th grade social studies classroom where they begin by looking at cuneiform back in ancient history and really explore deeply how written and oral language has kind of shaped who we are as a community today. Next slide, please. In 8th grade, all of these skills really begin to come together, and we begin back to reflect back on ourselves with our own American history. 18th and 19th century is typically what is looked at, and something I'm very proud of, and I know our whole social studies department is very proud of, is most of the lessons that are given at the Middle School of Plainville are able to be looked at through the lens of not only the state of Connecticut, but oftentimes the town of Plainville, and how these things that we're learning about can affect us today. Next slide, please. Next, science. In 6th grade, students primarily come in with some knowledge of science. However, we really focus on learning the skills and basic concepts of science, such as basic lab equipment, and as well as focusing on the nature of science and giving students kind of this initial burst of phenomena where they will become interested in science and learn about how different concepts work together. Next slide, please. In 7th grade, we start to really focus on the cross-cutting concepts, disciplinary core ideas, and science and engineering practices, which are currently our NGSS standards. A great example is one you'll see up on your screen right now. Students took breakfast cereal and took 2 or 3 different units that they've already learned about and synthesized their learning in one lab. We are very happy to be having labs back at the Middle School of Plainville. This one combines the magnetic attraction unit that we have, which is forces in motion. It combines the human anatomy unit, as well as the chemical unit on what would happen if we were to ingest iron filings, which are in breakfast cereal. Now you know. Next slide, please. 8th grade is when we start to see the mastery of these skills. Up on the screen, you will see 2 different labs and examples of those things. The first one being the look at DNA. We start to see that in 8th grade, they look and use skills from both our social studies, our math, and our ELA departments to take a deeper dive into the genetics that make us who we are. They look at the ethics, as well as run some mathematical calculations and read some research around that phenomena. Up above that, we will see the structure and function of cells. That lab was dealt with and used Plainville pond water to see what is actually growing in our local ponds, so kind of trying to bring it back once again to the local area. Next slide, please. Lastly, our ELA department is working very hard. It is their 2nd year with a new curriculum, so they are still researching and trying to get the most out of that curriculum, as well as using a new readers, writers workshop model, which primarily consists of a mini lesson in the beginning, a time of independent and student-centered self-work, and then often ends with a share-out, whether it's with the teacher themselves or with each other. I highly encourage you all to, after reading and communicating and collaborating with all the instructional leaders at the Middle School of Plainville, I hope it's evident that learning is happening. These pictures do tell quite the tale, and I highly encourage you to stop by sometime to see for yourself. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce our assistant principal, Mr. Ryan Cornelius, to talk a little bit more about some of the data points that we've collected that also backs up that student learning is happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grudy. Who doesn't want to talk about data after a nice long board meeting? I'll try to make it easy and relatively fast, but we're really excited at the middle school this year. We are piloting several different curriculums, resources to make sure that we can provide the best experience for our students. With the goals in mind, as they're listed above, we want to make sure that we provide a learning experience to every student that meets the student where they are. That means regardless of their ability level and their given grade, we can provide an education to them that is meaningful to every individual student. We want to implement a curriculum that accounts for the social and emotional well-being for students, provides windows and mirrors, meaning that they get glimpses into other people's cultures as well as see their own culture reflected in the curriculum. Very important point of access for our students. And our final program goal is to make sure that we are able to consistently overachieve on what the state standards are. Plainville has a history of excellence, and we want to make sure that at the middle school we continue that and make it even better. Next slide, please, Mr. Ross. The process, I won't bore you with all the details, but I did want to show you that we are being extremely rigorous as we look towards implementing a new resource. This summer, one of the first things I did through my employment was to start identifying some of the more high quality resources that we have available to us within Plainville with different vendors. For every pilot program that ended up getting selected, we have gotten presentations through the vendors, we have gotten login access or sample materials provided. Every resource will be taught for a minimum of a single unit to make sure that we get the full experience of it for both our students' sake as well as our educators' sake, to make sure that it fits not only our student needs but our teaching styles as well. We have the ability to follow up with all of the vendors, and we have a rubric we're following as a math team to make sure that we are consistently grading these resources to make sure that we are non-biased and select what's best for our students. Next slide, please. When possible, we have reached out to other districts. We have looked at other districts around us with similar demographics that have been successful. We have asked them what they're using. We have consulted with the State Department of Education for input when that was available and appropriate. And we have sent team members to Clark Lane Middle School in Waterford, who is piloting, or actually has implemented Desmos, which is the program we're currently piloting, and they had a wonderful experience there. And as I said, we are being very rigorous with our rubric as well. Next slide, please. So the pilot program where we are right now, we started with the brand new Envision program. While it was highly rated, it did not fit the needs of our school in terms of what we were looking for. Teachers felt the program offered a great deal of resources. However, the ease of use, student experience, and the digital platforms were not meeting what we looked for. We have transitioned now. We are in the middle of piloting the new program, which is called Desmos. It is an online digital tool with print resources available. It provides an interactive, exploratory nature of mathematics in which students get to manipulate math through their Chromebooks with more traditional methods embedded as well. Early feedback in this program is very, very encouraging from teachers as well as students. The students have actually enjoyed math, and when you walk into our math classrooms, they are engaging, lively, and enjoyable learning environments to be in. Next slide, please. We also have revamped our SRBI program, which provides some help for our students who have traditionally struggled in math. So what we looked at, Mr. Crinity and myself, this summer is, what do our students that are not meeting expectations in math need? The answer to that is almost certainly number sense. They struggle with manipulating numbers in a way that makes sense so that they can put them back together in a way that fits. We have used iReady data, teacher input, and other assessments to select students for the 36-day rotations in which students are pulled from one of their 5 tech ed classes in order to receive some additional math help. Our early feedback on this program, which is in kind of a pilot phase as well, has been extremely positive, and as you'll see in a moment, the data that we're getting out of this program is extremely good. For a brand new program, Mr. Crinity has done a wonderful job, and our students are benefiting greatly from this new revised program. Above you see the data. On the left is very strong whole school mathematics data from our iReady assessment in the winter diagnostic. At this point in the school year, we would expect that our median score be somewhere in the realm of 50%. As you can see, as a math department, we're at 75%, which means we are 3/4 of the way to our year-end goal at halfway through the year. That's impressive data. Mr. Crinity's subgroups through rotation 1, Mr. Crinity's group was able to achieve a median score of 85%, outpacing our very impressive school-wide data. For rotation number 2, Mr. Crinity's group achieved 108% of their year-long data growth expectation, which means the average student in Mr. Cronitti's rotation 2 period has already exceeded their year-long growth expectations, which is phenomenal. Next slide, please. Our academic progress. So in our first year of iReady for implementation for ELA and math, we've seen progress that exceeds expectations for the midpoint in the year. Our staff is working hard to provide engaging, relevant, and rigorous learning opportunities for our students on a daily basis, and our mid-year data that we are very excited to share with you now reflects this hard work. So just a review of what we're looking for here. These are our school improvement plan goals. We wanted to decrease our Tier 3 students. Our Tier 3 is defined as students who are 2 or more grade levels below the expectation. We wanted to decrease that number from 38.6% to 34%, while simultaneously increasing our students who are on grade level according to iReady from 31% to 36%. Next slide, please. This is where our RTI triangle started on the left, and on the right is where we've ended up. So our Tier 3 students have decreased from 39% of our population to 34%. In half a year, that's a pretty big jump. In our Tier 1 students, that are students that are on grade level, has jumped from 31% to 41%. That's a remarkable gain in only half of a year. We are on track to meet or exceed all areas of iReady growth as outlined in our school improvement plan that are iReady related. iReady typical growth. So again, at this point in the year, we're looking at 50% median growth. We're at 100% already. Our average student has already met their learning targets for the year. And obviously we will keep pushing. We want this number to continue growing. We want to continue to catch these students up. In the bottom, I outlined for you, roughly 37% of our students showed little to no growth in the iReady assessment. We have identified who these students are and are proactively taking steps to make sure that they're able to be successful in the second half of the school year. In math, we have a very similar goal, decrease our Tier 3 from 38.2% to 33%, while simultaneously increasing the number of students that are in Tier 1 on grade level from just shy of 24% to 30%. And I am pleased to say that we have actually met this goal already. Our Tier 3 students has dropped from 39% of our school population to 30% of our population, while our Tier 1 students, those on grade level, has increased from 24% to 36%. Those are remarkable gains in a half of year. We have already met or exceeded all of our school improvement goals as far as math is concerned, and again, we will continue to keep pushing. We outlined this before, 75% is our median score. I did want to point out that roughly 10% of our students, we did do an analysis of the students between ELA and math who failed to make growth. Roughly 10% of our student population failed to make growth on either one of the assessments. Those students have been identified, names have been sent to the team leaders, and team leaders are actively working to put a plan together to address those concerns and looking at adult actions that can be taken by the team members to make sure that those students have a more successful half of the year so that they have a successful 21-22 school year. And I will kick it to Ms. Roberts to finish up on where we are headed.
So we have a great team working at the middle school right now. We don't want to leave any of our students behind, but we always want to keep looking ahead. So looking ahead, we do want to adopt and fully implement a new math curriculum. We want to continue monitoring our new, still new to us, ELA curriculum, expand our world language program, examine and take a look at and start the process anew with our other curriculums, and make sure that we're always looking to align all of our programming to PHS and make sure we're creating pathways to help our students succeed at PHS, college, and career. We never want to stop providing our teachers with high-quality professional development, which will be required to keep improving in utilizing and implementing the new ELA curriculum, our data systems, iReady, SRBI program, SEL, and equity. And finally, collaboration. This data is so important to our work in pinpointing where we go next. So we want to continue surveying, meeting as committees, developing best practices and mastery, curriculum, instruction, SEL, equity, pathways, scheduling, and school climate. So all those things are the things we're looking forward to implementing as we move forward. And we really appreciate you and your time here always and tonight. And our 8th grade art students left you a little present. It's a bookmark made out of the art that they created based on a poem they read by Maya Angelou. And there's a few quotes on the back for you. So I hope everybody has a great Valentine's Day. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if anyone has any questions for our middle school team before we move to the next presentation. I do want to thank them for all the work they put into this, and I know we had rehearsal earlier today, and a lot of work goes into it. A lot of work that goes into being able to share the story that they shared with the successes and all the hard effort that's been put into really looking closely at where students are and getting them closer to where we need them to be, and really making great strides. So I'm very proud of the team, proud of the middle school. I'm there a lot because I mentor there and I get to see the great things happening. So we have room to grow in every school across the district, and we acknowledge that, but I'm very proud of the work happening. So thank you to the middle school team. If anyone has any questions now or after, that's fine. If not, we'll move on with Mr. Lewandowski. You can do it right from your seat, Dave, Mr. Lewandowski. Yep. I don't want you to trip over the caution tape there. He's going to do some high jump over there. Anyone wants to stand up and stretch their legs at any time, feel free to. So Mr. Lewandowski is going to give a update presentation about the social emotional learning and equity work happening in the district. As I mentioned in my message I sent out today, there's a lot of misinformation that can be derived from the terms that have been somewhat misused in some circumstances. I really want the district and everyone to know the great things that are happening to really support kids, the entire development of our students and our staff, and supporting our staff during difficult times, during any times. It's difficult to be an adult growing up in the world. It's difficult to be a student trying to become an adult and become who you want to be. So the core of this work is to really support all kids in achieving their greatest outcome they can possibly achieve. So Mr. Lewandowski will share some of the terrific work happening in our district around these areas.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. LePage, and good evening, everyone. Some of the slides that we go through will mirror what Amy and her team have just talked about with their work in SEL and equity, because this is really a district update. So you're going to hear about the work pre-K through 12, so there will be some overlap, which is good. And as Mr. LePage said, in full transparency, we're trying to show exactly what we're doing in these areas in Plainville, so there's no misconceptions. Next slide. So this graphic just shows that when we focus on ensuring students have access to high-level instruction, providing students with safe and supportive learning environments, and allow students to achieve successes at different points along their learning continuum, then we will increase the likelihood that our students will have a more positive experience within our schools and will be prepared for life after high school, which is the ultimate goal. Next slide. Previous slide. Good. You saw this in Ms. Roberts' presentation, our theories of action. So this is one of our North Star statements that drives our work. Tonight, I'm going to try to address the comprehensive work the district is conducting within the areas of both SEL and equity. Unfortunately, like Mr. LePage said, we've heard these terms become interpreted in much different ways, which don't truly represent the work we're doing in Plainville in these areas. So beginning with our SEL work, I just highlighted in our theory of action the importance we place on supporting the social and emotional needs of our staff and students. Next slide. So I use this data that's on the screen not only to show the data supporting the need to focus on improving our students' social and emotional health and well-being, but also to direct you to the date of this study. So the date of this study, which is a comprehensive meta-analysis, so it was years of study to come to this conclusion in 2011, which is 11 years ago, how important SEL work is. And you heard Ms. Roberts talk about all the work that we've always done in this area. It's just been called many different things along the years that we've been here doing this work. So improving the social and emotional well-being of our students is definitely not new. We've used many programs and strategies in the past, most recently positive behavior supports, Second Step, responsive classroom, among many others, to accomplish the same goals we strive for today, which is to provide our students with the skills necessary to best manage their emotions and behaviors, as well as positively react to other students' emotions and behaviors. Next slide. So SEL work aligns with the climate and culture within our schools and district. We strive to create a positive learning environment in which we support each other and create the safest environment for our students and staff, not only in a physical sense, but also to understand how to speak and listen to others respectfully, emphasizing that we are all one PCS family. Next slide. Good. These are the major areas of work we're engaged in order to create that safe and supportive learning environment I just referred to. Relationship building and creating a sense of belonging for all staff and students is integral for our success. Next slide. So the ruler approach, and those are the letters you see there all meaning different things, provides the framework we have implemented in order to teach the skills for managing emotions. And as you can see on the slide, each letter stands for a different step in the process of managing emotions. So there are 4 anchor tools of ruler. Over the next few slides, I'll explain how each of these 4 anchor tools, mood meter, which you saw in Ms. Roberts' presentation, the charter, the meta moment, and the blueprint, are used within the ruler approach. So you also saw this in the last presentation. You'll see this throughout every school. So if you've had the pleasure of visiting a school or a classroom over the last year or two, you may have seen the mood meter in action as a resource for students and staff. This tool allows us to label the emotions we are feeling at any given time. And as was stated at the last presentation, you can see the energy and pleasantness on the side and bottom of that mood meter. So each square represents a different emotion, going from high to low energy or low to high pleasantness. The charter is a process in which the school community, within a classroom and school-wide, determines how they want to feel and how they will help everyone else feel that same way. So it's a collaborative effort to figure out what are those kinds of expectations and how do we want to feel and have others feel. That second tool is the meta moment. So this is taught as a strategy to pause and de-escalate before responding. It incorporates being your best self, which is a positive image of yourself and how you react. You can see those steps on the side in that box. Next slide, yeah. So your best self is a mix between your personal ideal of yourself and your desired reputation, or how we want to be viewed by others. You can see that best self is right in the middle. It's a mixture between those 2 areas. And the last anchor tool is the blueprint, which describes the process of how to reflect on a situation by examining how you responded to another individual based on the ruler skills. So again, kind of a blueprint of how to react and reflect on a situation. And then on one of the previous slides, I showed that data, which showed the positive relation to social emotional learning work and the well-being of students. Here is the positive evidence from schools that implement the ruler program or approach. These are all outcomes we would want to see to be considered an effective school or district. And then the following slides represent what it looks like in action. So allowing our students to share information about themselves, their culture, their language, and their lives helps to strengthen that student's connection with the school and the school community. Over the next few slides, I'm just going to capture some examples of this great work. So right here you see these 3 students sharing information about their own cultures, about their own language. If you go to the next slide, you can see examples of more of that work, a parent coming in and sharing her traditions. And this involves student recognitions. We try to recognize as many students as possible in as many different ways as possible for their great work. Good. And then lastly, again, all of these slides and pictures are an extremely small sampling of what goes on within our schools to connect the students and recognize their individual talents, successes, and accomplishments. You can stay on this slide. So this is some of the ongoing work we are committed to so that we can continue to meet the social emotional needs of our students. Our ongoing committee work, student engagement in their own learning, connecting the portrait of the graduate to learning activities, and using proactive tools to support student needs. And talking about supportive tools. If you go to the next slide. I actually added this slide in after I was done with my presentation because I had some great feedback from the middle school for an example of how this worked in action. So this slide shows one of the proactive tools we're using at the secondary level. So in the middle school and the high school. Middle school, they're actually up right now. High school is getting them up. And it provides students a confidential way to report something that's concerning to them. So this is just one example of a proactive tool being used to help students. And I'm happy to report that the poster that is shown right there in the middle school has already been proven effective. As the day it went up, a student used that QR code. So you scan the QR code with your phone. And it's a way to then answer some questions and get help and support from an adult on the crisis team without having to go seek them out, having to do it, and maybe have someone see you go and do it. This is confidential. You can do it in secret if you have to, but this was a positive experience where help immediately was provided for that student in a pretty serious situation, and the family was connected with as well. So going back to the district statement that guides our work, that theory of action, we're now going to transition to our equity work. And our equity work and social emotional learning work, there are some overlaps to that work. Just like that triangle, they all connect. So the highlighted portion of this statement refers to equitable learning environments. And over the next few slides, I'm going to share what that means in Plainville. So first off, it's important to begin with some statements that every parent of a student in our schools would hopefully agree to. All students deserve to be supported, taught, and challenged in an appropriate manner. No student should encounter barriers that limit their access and opportunities. And a student's identity or background should not predetermine their educational outcomes. Our goal is to ensure that we uphold these statements in our daily work. So this is what equity means in Plainville. A focus on data, and you saw that in the middle school presentation. Opening access to high-level instruction and experiences for all students, and ensuring that our students feel part of the school community by being able to personally connect to the instructional material. I will go into more detail for each of these three critical areas in the following slides. So first, data is extremely important to analyze in order to determine the effectiveness of our teaching practices. In order to truly meet the individual needs of our students, we also need to determine how equitable our practices are and if our practices are impacting subgroups of students differently. Next slide. So this is just an example of some of the data that we collect and analyze. And in this example, we try to determine if any trends exist. So this example shows the representation of particular subgroups of students in our highest level middle school math course, which is our algebra for high school credit. If you go to the next slide. Yep, this is the same type of data, but with our high school, showing subgroup representation in our highest level of courses at Plainville High School. So this information, that middle school information and the high school information, will lead us to dig deeper into the data to understand reasons why specific subgroups may be less represented in some of our highest level coursework. So again, it's data to get kind of a trend, and then you dig deeper to find out, is there any reason for this? Is it our practices? Is there something else going on? Next slide. So the second major area of equity work is opening access to students for high-level coursework and experiences. So like those two data slides, and what the data has really proven in Plainville is we have areas to improve when considering the enrollment of our various student subgroups in our highest level coursework. So as we consider our pre-K to 12 instructional model and student experiences, we need to ensure we eliminate any barriers that may exist that would create a deficit mindset in our students or that blocks certain students from engaging in higher level work. And some examples I have on there is cost for some coursework, tracking of students, maybe some recommendations that they need to have in order to take a class, their schedule, when we offer classes or don't offer classes, and student expectations. So we are actively auditing our own practices to ensure we open up access for all students who have specific interests, skills, and proficiencies. Next slide. So this slide lists some of the ongoing work we are engaged in to increase options and opportunities for all our students. So we really have robust makerspace and STEM experiences for our elementary students. We're trying to expand our high-level coursework. So in middle school, we're trying to look into other ways to offer high school credit in middle school for maybe some high-interest areas. We're also doing that in high school with some of our college offerings, allowing them to take a multitude of courses for college credit while in high school. And we're also trying to broaden our career experiences for our students all across our system. But that last one, that unpaid experiential learning program, that's a coordination with the Department of Labor and with the State Department of Education to give our students credit for opportunities to work in a career field with a mentor, and then there's a certified teacher that oversees that. So they're getting that work experience or just an experience of interest in a certain field and doing projects within that field. Next slide. We also want to ensure our students feel represented in their school experiences, and also that our instruction is relevant and meaningful to their lives. Next slide. And this, again, I borrowed from middle school because they were redoing their curriculum. So some of the things that they're doing, the elementary schools have already started to do, and we're getting there in the high school as well. But this slide explains some of the work the middle school English Language Arts department conducted to ensure their book selections would connect with the students we serve. So you look at those areas that are checked off, just thinking about, can kids relate to the books that they're reading? Can they relate to the characters? Can they relate to the author that's writing it, the material within the book? And if you go to the next slide, it just shows that in action. Providing choice for students also allows students to practice the skills and concepts they are learning to a book they're interested in reading instead of a book that's just chosen for them. And then in this slide, it displays examples of the high school learning adventure days where students choose the activities they want to learn about and participate in. As the last bullet on that little squared out area explains, this allows students to choose an area to learn more about which aligns with our Porch of the Graduate work, college and career pathways, and new mastery-based graduation requirement. So again, it's letting students have more voice and choice in their learning experience, which definitely drives engagement and gets them more involved. Next slide. So in Plainville, equity really means ensuring all our students are college and career ready when they graduate. Our equity work involves creating high-level opportunities for students from pre-K all the way to 12th grade that takes into account student interest and student choice. And we have that little graphic there, which shows the exposure, exploration, and experience all the way through our continuum of learning in Plainville, from elementary to middle to high school. So through our college and career path work, we are attempting to capitalize on student engagement and ownership that this type of programming can offer. As the research in this field indicates, there are significant positive impacts to implementing college and career programming, such as increased graduation rates, increased academic outcomes, positive student behavior, and positive post-high school outcomes. And this slide just provides an overview of the major goals for our college and career pathways work. So those blocks there, we have early exposure to careers. As early as elementary, you're starting to expose students to the career options that they have out in the real world, what it looks like, having presenters come in. We're connecting our work to the Porch of the Graduate. Again, that's a big part of our social emotional learning work, where we're teaching those attributes of the Portrait of the Graduate across elementary to high school. We want to make coursework relevant for students. School isn't what it was when I was in school. School isn't what it is when all the audience or board members were in school. Things are changing rapidly. We want to make sure our instruction and what we're preparing students for changes. Rigor is another area we're working on. We want high-level experiences for all kids. We can't expect kids to do well on any of standardized assessments if we haven't given them high-level courses to prepare them for those high-stakes assessments. We're trying to develop student portfolios so they can kind of build their own resume as they go through the school system and through the school district, building on their experiences. And then that last block, continuity and coherence. We want to make a more coherent connection between the elementary experience to the middle school experience to high school and then beyond. So it's all connected. Next slide. So we are also currently working on several different visuals that will eventually be visible within the hallways of our schools to promote the various college and career pathways, coursework, and experiences that students can choose from based on their personal interests and aspirations. So these are just a couple examples of some of the things we want to put in the hallways that really explain what we're trying to do with our college and career work. This will also help show students at all levels the multitude of opportunities that are available within Plainville Community Schools. Next slide. We also have incredible community and business connections that we are further expanding upon to ensure we can provide all students with career exploration, exposure, and experiences in their areas of interest. This slide provides an overview of some of the career work that is currently happening with our students. The SEL and equity work I described during this presentation is the work that will provide us with the best possible chance to prepare our students for success in life and allow them to thrive and flourish, as it says in our theory of action. These bulleted items summarize the outcomes we expect from our SEL and equity work across the district. We want active student engagement and input in the learning process so they can own their own learning and make it relevant to them. We're trying to make sure that we are creating responsible and healthy students within the school system. We want to strengthen our continuum of learning from elementary all the way to high school and beyond. And we want to make sure that all our students are prepared for whatever they choose to do after graduation. So that concludes my presentation. So at this time, I can open it up to any questions. I'll do my best to answer them. But like I said, this is a lot of comprehensive work kind of shrunk down into a presentation that I'm sure I went over, but I tried to get it to about 15 minutes. But again, this is ongoing work, and if there's any questions that you have that I can't answer, I can always get the answer from any of the various individuals across the district that are doing this work every day.
Any questions for Mr. Lewandowski? If not, I just want to thank him. He put a lot of work into this, and we rehearsed earlier as well. And actually, it was the exact same amount of time, Mr. Lewandowski. Nice job. If it were me, it would go 10 minutes over.
I didn't have to walk to the podium. It saved some time.
No, I appreciate you highlighting many of the district efforts that are underway and showing success and really supporting our students and our staff. This part of the presentation is mine. I know it's a long superintendent's report tonight, but I'd like to share updates on the mask guidance and related considerations, just as informational items for the Board of Education and as information to share out with our public. I would like to thank the members of the community who completed the survey. I know we sent it on a Sunday morning. It was very busy. It's been a very busy time. We had the survey includes about just over 1,100 responses, I believe, but we're up to about 1,140 responses. So I do want to thank everyone. So just some background on the masking considerations related to Plainville. Mask requirements in school end either on tomorrow or February 28th, depending on if the legislature outcomes. It's in the process, I believe, in the Senate today. It was in the House of Representatives on Thursday. It was passed at the House. Mask mandates, if the bill passes, the package is a package of a number of things wrapped into the bill, including the mask mandate. If it passes the House, if it passes the Senate, it already passed the House, then the Governor Lamont's recommendations to continue the mask mandate through February 28th at the state level will remain in effect. If it doesn't pass the Senate, the mask mandate will go away on the 15th, which is tomorrow. The Department of Public Health, in cooperation with the State Department of Education, has been preparing guidance and some guidelines for superintendents. We have a meeting tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. We have not met with them in, I believe it's 3 weeks now. They canceled the last meeting, awaiting the governor's decisions. They've been working on guidance. I have not seen it. I've heard some rumorings, but that's about it at this point. The DPH, under the governor's under the bill within the mask mandate, DPH in cooperation with CSE can reinstitute a universal mask requirement if cases spike like as we saw with Omicron earlier this year. If there's a health emergency, they're able to do that as part of that until June 30th of 2022, and then that ability goes away. If the bill package fails the Senate, the mask mandate ends tomorrow, as I said, when the governor's executive order ends. A Board of Education policy would be required if the board wishes to implement a mask requirement outside of these state level decisions. So I just wanted to make that clear. On the next slide, Plainville's I spoke with our local health director today, Susan Lonzik, and she was very helpful. I know she shared information with Town Manager Robert Lee as well, so we appreciate her assistance. It's a very difficult job on many levels. Plainville, just our case rate and vaccination rate, I'll share some information on that just so everyone's aware. We've had a total of 3,425 confirmed and presumed positive cases since COVID started in Plainville. There have been 51 total deaths in Plainville from COVID. Case positivity is currently 47.7 per 100,000 people. I know we don't have 100,000 people in Plainville, but that's a ratio that they use as a metric. So everyone's kind of looking at the same data across the state. It's extrapolated. Last week, Plainville had 45 cases, which is down from 72 cases in the previous week. As a state, our positivity rate has gone down to 3.32% as of today, which is very good news. Of the 406 patients currently hospitalized with laboratory-confirmed COVID-19, 187 of them, which is 46.1%, were not fully vaccinated. For the week beginning January 30th, 2022, unvaccinated persons had a 3.1 times greater risk of testing positive for COVID compared to fully vaccinated persons. And then for that same week, unvaccinated persons had a 15.2 times greater risk of dying from COVID-19 compared to fully vaccinated persons. So that's just some vaccine information about cases and vaccination facts as a whole. These are our vaccination rates on the next slide, if you'd share it with Kevin. These are as of February 9th. This data is collected from our local health department and the state health department. Our numbers are low comparatively compared to other towns. I know these numbers are close to 80, 90% in West Hartford and other districts, especially at the upper 12 to 17 level, and in the 60s to 70s in some of the 5 to 11-year-old. So as a town, and as a, these are the age groups. It doesn't break it down by grade, but you can expand that to, to understand that a little bit better. So 5 to 11, I won't go through every number, but the highest number is 45 to 60, actually 65 plus year olds are 99% or more vaccinated, which is a good thing for them. And then as you go down, you see the rates fully vaccinated. 5 to 11-year-olds are 31.06%. School case rates, it should say in black writing there, have had a sharp decline in the last week. Cases are still averaging though, one to two cases per day for the district. The most recent statewide data can be found in that link there that will be available. We can put that on the website. Kevin, you're one slide ahead of me still. Sorry, I didn't look up. I'm looking at my computer. So you might have been asking yourself, what is he reading? So on this slide, the blue link at the bottom shows data across the state. If you'd like to access that, I'll make that available on our website, or I can send it in a newsletter. Next slide now, Kevin, thank you. So our case history, this is, at a glance, it's alarming because last year, and we started hybrid, and then we had some students opting to remain home, about 20% or so at the high school, 25 at the most at one point, or 22%, less at the elementary and middle school level. When learning at home was an option. It's not anymore unless you are isolated for COVID or quarantined. So these, from 2020 to 21, there are 169 student cases and 141 staff cases throughout the entire year, total of 210 cases. This year we've had 581 student cases already and 123 staff cases for a total of 704 cases. So I'm just providing all the details. I do send out the reports. Since my last report, it's been a few weeks. I haven't sent them as regularly. We have a dashboard of information on our website, but just with our case rates over the last, since January 17th, about a month ago, we had 78 total student cases and 27 total staff cases within just about the last month. But cases are dropping in the last week, which is a very good thing. This is data from the survey, and there's a lot of information here. I'll make this available to everyone so you have it, because if I go through every single detail, it'll take a really long time. But we had, at the time that we created these tables, we had 1,109 responses to the survey in just about 24 hours. So again, I appreciate everyone's help. More respondents wish masks were removed than masks retained. Overall, 44% wish they were removed compared to 30% wanting them to be, maintained. An additional 27% answered to use State Department of Ed and DPH guidance in making the decision. Breaking it down, a greater percent of employees wish to have masks retained, while a greater percentage of family members wish them removed based on the data we collected here. Again, I'll make all this available. There's a lot to look at there. You could going back one slide. Oh, actually, never mind. You didn't move. You could opt to select two answers for this one. So you could say either remove or keep, and also select multiple answers. So you could also say use the State Department of Ed and DPH guidance and keep masks. We had a number that said that, and we had a number that said use the guidance and remove masks. So there was some overlap, but the total number of survey responses was still 1,109. So this slide kind of shows that a little bit. Takeaways from this is that in addition to the respondents who answered use the guidance, 72% of those who answered keep masks also answered to use the guidance, compared to 28% of those who said remove masks also said to use the guidance. So, it seems like using the guidance is shared by both groups of those wanting to remove masks and those wanting to keep masks, at least to some degree. On the next slide, by location, this just shows families and staff members on the left and right side, and then by the school. I won't go through every single number, but I did collect information about each location. So that this will be made available, and the board can review this and the public can review this as well. It's all public information that we've created based on the surveys. Families range, takeaways are that families range 42 to 43% by location for removing masks, compared to 27 to 36% of staff. Elementary MSP staff answered 27% to remove masks, compared to 34% at the high school, which makes sense with the higher vaccination rates at the high school. Staff members with students in the district are combined under staff. PFRN, Plainville Family Resource Network, and adult ed percents are from a small number of responses. They're a pretty small group. Next slide. So I gave an open-ended question. We had 424 responses, so rather than going through all those, I'll make those available. I'm going to provide them to the board. They were coming in all the way until about 2 o'clock today. I did ask by noon, but it was a very short time window. So these are just major themes that were gleaned from the responses. The question was, if you're opposed to masks being required, please briefly share responses and why. And these are just kind of the main themes. It's time was the most common answer. Leave it to parents was another common answer. Masking is ineffective. Masking is unhealthy, and masking hinders learning. So those are kind of the big buckets, if you will, of responses. Again, I'll get those all to you tomorrow. Mask survey, if you responded in favor of continuing mask requirements in school, please briefly just share your specific reason or related concerns. There were 435 short answers to this. The common answers were safety was the most common. Safety for special education children was another common answer. Safety for young students not eligible for the vaccine. Safety for at-risk community members. Concerns about bringing the vaccine home to a family member who's at risk. Another one was incident rates for case rates, and then students coming to school sick is a common thing. And then finally, there was an open-ended question. Please share any additional perspectives. The first two were short answers. This one was you could write as much as you wanted. I've received, as I said in my email, about probably 400 emails with pretty lengthy and passionate explanations about beliefs, and I have read most of them. I've fallen a little behind. I won't tell you I've read every single one, but I've tried. This is hopefully condensing the answers a little bit. But some of these were the responses, the most common responses. And I want to thank Mr. Allerstein for helping pull this data together. There were a lot of things going on today, and he helped to put this report together based on the survey, because he's an expert in Excel and gleaning themes. So thank you, Sam. But thank you. This is hard was a common answer, so I appreciate people understanding that. Make it optional was another common answer. Consider requirements for the unvaccinated. Consider phases or phasing it in. Concern for sick family members, and then consider special education. So those were kind of the open-ended They were more lengthy, so there's a lot of information there. Again, I'll share it. There were 371 open-ended responses. That's the end of my the presentation as to where we are with masking. You know, as I mentioned in my correspondence home to families and to the Board of Education and staff, you know, I believe that tomorrow's meeting will be insightful, and I hope it will. You know, we don't know what the Senate is going to do yet. There's still a lot of things up in the air. If nothing's done by the board at this time, the masking mandates will end. So the only way to implement masking in the district would be to approve a policy. You know, there was considerations whether something should be done today. There can be a special meeting for that purpose. We just have to have a day's notice to post it. So those are all considerations for the board, and hopefully the information shared tonight is helpful. And I'll follow up with all the additional comments and feedback shared from the citizens, and also with the state and local health department. I have 2 meetings back to back, 8 and 9:30 tomorrow morning, to get more information out to everyone. Okay, moving on to the next item on my agenda. It's related to our district strategic. Oh, that didn't work. Somehow I'm out of order. That's okay. I'll save that till the end. Well, actually, I can go down to that. Could you go down about 10 slides, Kevin, to just so I go in order here? It's the one that says strategic planning, Plainville Community Schools. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hi. I do believe it has came in. Senate did pass, so that executive orders will be extended till February 28th.
Okay, that did pass today?
Yes.
Okay, good. It's been difficult. I tried to have Connecticut Network on and listen to that while I was taking calls. And at one point I was in a meet, my cell phone, I had someone on the cell phone, and Joan was at the door, and the phone was ringing on my office phone. So it was kind of like, you know, try to be in 4 places. So thank you for that update. I appreciate that. Really quickly on strategic planning, because if you're interested in it, you'll get to hear about it tomorrow night, because the strategic planning kickoff forum will be held tomorrow night at 6:30. That will be a remote live streamed event, really looking at our strategic planning process for the next 3 to 5 years, and I'll go into more detail on it tomorrow night. If you go to the next slide, that's kind of the cover slide from our presentation tomorrow night. I expect it to be about a 30 to 40-minute presentation. It's not going to be a lengthy presentation, and it'll have some interaction and opportunities for residents. Anyone joining that. It's a Zoom-based kind of webinar. We'll have breakout groups at one point, but it's really the kickoff phase. But the guiding question is, how can we transform Plainville Community Schools into the model district within Connecticut? I think it's a model district in many, many ways. I acknowledge that we have many areas that I want to improve in, and I know our district does as well, and our board and our staff. So as we continue that work, this is a guiding question. And that word transform is important, because we're doing a lot of things really well, but how can we even do even better using transformative practices, using some of the ESSER grant funding that we've learned about? How will we use those in a meaningful way, in addition to the applications of those funds that we've already used and things we have planned? You'll learn about that as well tomorrow. And then the next slide, the last slide on this topic tonight, there'll be a lot more tomorrow night. I like this visual. Again, Mr. Adlerstein, thank you. He's my left-hand man, Dave's my right-hand man. And I remember this quote here on the top right from Peter Drucker: "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." A powerful and engaging culture is a surer route to organizational success than strategy alone. So really building that culture, building that capacity, building the voice from the community, getting involvement. I see one of our members from our last strategic planning process in the audience who spoke tonight. But we start with that culture in our core beliefs, and look at our vision, look at our rolling 3-year mission for the district. How are we going to implement that vision? Our initiatives that are related to that, our projects that align with all the above, the actions that we do to get our projects done, in the implementation of our plan. Really keeping the public informed throughout the process. Our district vision right now is over 5 years old, so we're working on what comes next. We've done some reiterations and updates to that over the last few years, but COVID's been a challenge to that process. So now I will, if you'd like to hear more about strategic planning and be involved, which I hope you do, Tomorrow night at 6:30 will be our kickoff, and we'll have opportunities after that. Kevin, if you could go back to the 3 circles of happiness. My recommended budget tonight, one of the action items on the new business is voting on the budget for the district. So I just want to give a lot of this is from the presentation I sent to parents. I've done 5 presentations on the budget so far. One with the town manager was as a kickoff, kind of our status as a district where we are in the town. So this is going to give you an overview just of what we're looking for and some of the details within, very briefly. Hopefully you have tuned into some of the other presentations, and there's a lot of information on our district budget site that's been on the website. So with everything that we've done, our goal is to always inspire and prepare lifelong learners to follow their passion, engage in their communities, and positively impact our global society. You know, that can sound like buzzwords, but if you hear the middle school presentation tonight or any of the presentations, Mr. Lewandowski's presentation, the high school last month, you see that being implemented. It's not just words on a page. So inspire, prepare, engage. I made budgeting commitments to the Board of Education, to the town. Mr. Ross, if you go to the next slide. Being conscientious and goal-focused in our approach. Request only what we believe essential to educate and support our students through these times of challenge and change. Model our portrait of the Plainville graduate by collaborating, communicating, innovating, remaining mindful and resilient in our budgeting practices and in all things. And then do our very best to provide the needs for our children, families, and dedicated PCS staff family. And they are a family. As they know, I call them the PCS family, because we depend on one another through good times and bad. Next slide, Kevin. These are some of the graphics from the infographic that Lynn Davis put together for us based on our work. So I won't go through every detail. You'll see more of this tomorrow night. But just our focus on that cyclical process of looking at students' teaching and learning, and our vision to inspire and prepare lifelong learners to follow their passion, engage in their communities, and positively impact our global society. These are some of the core areas of success on the right that I won't read all of them, but we're very proud of the work that we're doing in the district and working hard every day to get better. On the next slide, looking at transformation and continuous improvement, we'll start that process. Well, we've been doing that process, but we'll get a more broad involvement in that process tomorrow night and beyond. District budget will support the primary areas of focus, including, when we look at the core values of SEL, equity, and mastery, as I've said before, and as Mr. Lewandowski said, sometimes those terms become blurred by misinformation or confusion. You saw and heard a lot about what they are in Plainville, but when you look at it, it's really the SEL, social emotional learning. It's really about ensuring wellness. It's about making sure our kids are healthy and well, and our staff as well. So really preparing our kids for a healthy lifestyle, mental health and physical health and nutritional health. For readiness, that's mastery. We want to make sure every single student in our district is ready for whatever they want to do in their life through our schools and after our schools. That's the mastery piece. Opportunities for all students. We want to make sure we have rigorous, engaging opportunities for every student in the district. That's the equity piece. So we want to make sure that we're providing what we need to for every student. And this budget does that, coupled with our additional ESSER funds we're using in different ways. And so the next slide is where the rubber hits the road with the numbers. So last year's adopted 21-22 budget for this current school year was $39,826,972. The budget before the health insurance increase this year, the health insurance was a major hit. We were told to budget 8% based on the brokers and the state health insurance gurus who determine what the state partnership plan rates should be considered at for budgeting purposes at this point. The dollar increase was $1,016,671, or 2.55%. Again, that's not including the health insurance increases for all of our staff and employees. The health insurance increases alone, it's an 8% increase over the health insurance from last year. It's not an 8% increase in our budget. I want to make that clear. It's a line item increase of 8%, which amounts to $465,000 change. After that being factored in, it raises our our budget increase to 3.72%, which is what I've proposed to the Board of Education for adoption. Total budget, $41,308,797. Of important note, and I've stated this before, the contractual increases alone for all of our employees, at the low end estimate, because we have 2 contracts that are starting in the spring, our office professionals and our custodians and maintainers. Contractual increase are 2.62% budget increase over the 2021-22 budget. Outside of the required health insurance rate increase, the revised budget that I presented was 2.55% increase, or 0.07% less than the contractual obligations that we're obligated to pay our employees. This is a very lean budget. There are risks involved. There are special ed expenses that we're running lean on. There are a number of inflation factors that have not really been calculated at the full extent of the possible impact. It's a lean budget, and I try to bring in a lean budget, and we have a little bit of a cushion, or quite a bit of cushion, from the use of ESSER funds to help offset some risk this year. This slide shows you, just based on a HASA, which is Hartford Area Superintendent Association I belong to, with a lot of people smarter than me, who are superintendents in other districts around the Hartford area. These are the budgets that they presented to their boards. So you can see where we are, 3.72, again, 2.5 or so, 2.55 before health insurance. So I won't read through all of them, but you can see kind of where we lie compared to some of the districts are close to 6%, some are quite a few are high 4s, middle 4s. So that's just where we are right now. You'll see that some are really low. We have some state alliance districts due to poverty and due to low achievement and trying to bridge the achievement gap, and a lot of extra requirements put on those districts. So some districts received close to $100 million of extra grant funds. There's additional alliance grant funds for those districts as well. So you can budget a little leaner because you're getting substantial grant money every year, not just an ESSER grant that's going to go away in a couple of years. And I'm almost done for tonight, and then I'll turn it over to the board for the next steps. Our per pupil expenditure was higher this past year than in the past. We're 100th out of 166 towns, so 99 other districts are higher than Plainville. We're lower than 60%. The comparison this year was a bit different because of COVID last year. We had a number of students who didn't come to school, some kindergartners who just, the parents kept them home, a low pre-K enrollment, and a number of other factors due to COVID. We had lost about 116 students, I believe it was, last year, who, for one reason or another, they've all come back, and then some this year. So I expect this number to be even more favorable, as far as, or lean, I should say, for the per pupil expenditure. So you can see where we stand. That's not every town in Connecticut, but for the sake of space, about every 5th town is shown. So this just some summary information on this next slide, Kevin. Maximizing resources, minimizing cost. Our per pupil expenditures there, the 11th year average school district budget increase, the 11-year average. So over the last 11 years, our average school district budget's been 1.82%. So it's not even really keeping up with inflation, definitely not keeping up with inflation this year. Average class size is at or around 20 or lower in some grades. We try to keep them significantly lower in preschool and kindergarten, and the younger grades when they're learning to read and getting ready for the next challenges and needing a lot of extra support, and then some of the older classes are a bit bigger. Next slide. Just a quick explanation of the COVID recovery grants, the ESSER grants, the American Rescue Plan, or ARPA, ESSER 3, Coronavirus Relief Fund. I didn't give you a whole breakdown of that. You've heard enough of that over the past couple of years, but this budget would be significantly higher if it weren't for our use of COVID recovery grant funding. We've used those funds to offset any new staff that have been added, in addition to another number of technology programs in other areas, about $1 million, close to $1 million in ESSER offsets. We're taking a risk because that COVID recovery money is going to go away after the 23-24 budget year. We'll need a way to sustain some of the programs and staffing it supports, or we're going to have to reduce those programs and staffing because we understand that that's not sustainable. So we've gone into these decisions with that knowledge in mind. This is called the fiscal cliff. We gave a presentation on that for our board at the second budget meeting, I believe it was, second or third. In our experience, once something is removed from the Board of Ed budget, operating budget, is a very big challenge to get it back in. We look forward to continue planning with the town leaders to provide a responsible budget for the residents to vote on April 26th. This shows you the calendar for the upcoming meetings. We're on Valentine's Day here, and about 2/3 of the way down. So after the board votes on the budget tonight, it goes to the town council for further consideration, deliberation, public comment. As the town council's proposed, town manager proposed budget to the town council, once they make their revisions and whatnot, that'll be adopted as the town budget, town of Plainville budget. It'll be voted on separately for the Board of Ed and the town in April. So that is where we stand. I did send in a question. I sent out a question form to our board throughout the entire process, and we answered all those questions throughout our process of the board budget workshops. We also sent this out to the families. I had one question about masks, and I had one question about preschool. So there weren't really any questions about the nuts and bolts of the budget that were submitted. I sent it out early last week. So at this point, this is just I'm not sure, Sam, you added this slide here. Oh, by town charter, the Board of Ed must provide a school budget to the town manager by February 15th, so by tomorrow. So that's why this meeting is important to vote on the budget. Straw voting during the budget workshops indicated the majority of members in favor of this budget. All budget-related information has already been shared prior to the last workshop discussion, so nothing new has been added this evening. And my proposal is that the board adopt the budget as it stands at 3.72%, as shared over the course of multiple meetings and multiple opportunities to ask questions and get clarification. And that concludes my report for tonight. I don't have any other items that I will share tonight due to the length of this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have the student representatives report tonight?
I thought they were going to send it. We did forgive them because we didn't know what time they would go on, and they had studies and practices, so I will look for those. If you want to go ahead, I can circle back if I can. I'll just try to find those. I'm pretty sure they sent them to me.
All right, Foster Facilities Finance Subcommittee report.
No, there is no facilities report.
Policy Subcommittee report.
Yep. The policy subcommittee met virtually on Monday, January 31st. You'll notice the policies that we went over in your packet that we will be talking about, I guess, under, is it new business? So basically, we had a review of student policy number 5114, the removal, suspension, expulsion, just eliminating and replacing with a proposed policy of student discipline. We went over student policy number 5131.6, alcohol use, drug, and tobacco policy. We also went over student policy number 5131.7, chemical health policy for student athletes. It was just an update to our current policy. We also reviewed personnel policy 4430, drugs, alcohol, drug-free workplace, illicit drugs and alcohol, an update to the current policy. And we proposed a policy for alcohol, tobacco, and drug-free workplace. We also reviewed community relations policy 1331, smoking in school facilities. Just a lot of word change, and so we'll eliminate the smoking in school facilities and we'll replace with a proposal prohibition against smoking. And we also reviewed student policy 5113, attendance and excuses, eliminate and replace with the proposed policy, attendance, truancy, and chronic absenteeism. So just a lot of little tweaks in our policies. I think that's it.
Mr. Lewandowski, those are all mandatory required policy updates, or?
The majority of those updates were in relation to the same public act for marijuana legislation.
That's what I thought, thank you. I did find the student representative, Mr. Johnson, has shared with me from his students, so I appreciate that, if that's okay. Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
All right. Student perspective, PHS is business as usual with a few days of school being canceled because of inclement weather. I know all about those. But the PHS community, students and staff alike adapts to the changes. Students had successful midterms, which lasted from Tuesday, January 25th to Friday, January 28th. Semester 2 officially began on Monday, January 31st. As the COVID-19 numbers continue to lower, students look forward to the conclusion of this pandemic and the loosening of restrictions. We also look forward to February break from the 18th to the 22nd. Overview of events at PHS. Looking back, PHS staff and administration held a successful open house for the upcoming freshman class of 2026, wow, on Wednesday, February 9th, with a half day to accommodate as well as holding in-school tours guided by seniors. I did get very positive feedback from the families about that. Currently, PHS staff released Q2 report cards today to students and families. PHS junior and senior class officers and prom committee members have turned their attention to prom, which is tentatively June 3rd, Saturday. To celebrate and reflect on Black History Month, PHS has opened the invitation for students to come on the morning announcements and talk about a significant person in relation to Black history. Looking ahead, PHS Jazz Band concert tomorrow night, February 15th at 6:30 in the PHS auditorium. The Special Education Department will be hosting a unified basketball game versus staff, unified basketball versus staff game at the Wood Gym at the high school here on the 17th at 5:15. I will be playing, and I'm not good, so it'll be fun to watch for everybody. Play every year, I love it. I know the board members have been invited too. That concludes the student perspective with my editorial added in. Sorry for that, Garrett. All right, so the March 14th, next meeting's March 14th, and that is all I have from our student representatives. Thank you, Garrett and Isabella Grasso.
Thank you. Curriculum Subcommittee report, anything?
There has been no curriculum meeting, no report.
Thank you. Outreach Subcommittee report, anything, Crystal? No, okay. Thank you. PAC liaison to the high school, Foster.
Yeah, the PAC met on January 12th. They just reported back on their fundraiser for the pies and all of that, that they will have at least a scholarship or two and hopefully for 3 people this year. And their next meeting, that meeting on the 12th was virtual. Their next meeting is scheduled for March 9th, and that probably will also be virtual.
Thank you. Next, we have the PTO liaison for Taflon, Rebecca.
Taflon PTO did not have a PTO meeting in January. There's no report.
Thank you. Cassandra, Linden Street School, PTO liaison.
Hi, good evening. For Linden Street PTO, I'm happy to report we met virtually on the 9th of February. They had great success recently, and they're doing a good job with the shop that they had over the Christmas break. They're doing, and they just did the Valentine lollygrams, where they handed out the students Valentines, where they paid $1 and they got the exchange. Also, the students all got one from the PTO along with the staff. So that was one thing to look forward to today, brighten things up. We're going to be doing a leprechaun bingo on the 16th. And tomorrow, I know there's a lot going on, but after the meeting tomorrow, if it ends in time, you can join us over at the Hop House for Linden Street PTO fundraiser. A portion of the proceeds from the dinners will go to the PTO So if you know, are finished and you want to go grab a bite to eat, Lindsay, our mascot, might actually be there as well. So just saying, there's a lot going on, but all right, thank you.
And your next meeting?
I'm not sure what the date is, but we are going to be meeting
Okay,
in
thank
March.
you.
You're welcome.
PTC liaison for the middle school, Crystal?
The MSP PTC met virtually on Tuesday, February 8th. As we heard earlier, lots of great things are happening over at MSP. They were excited to talk about their Oreograms for Valentine's Day that were sold and distributed today, I believe. They had a Wolfpack ticket fundraiser, and they did, with all these fundraisers, they did discuss that they will be providing the PHS scholarships as in years past. They also talked about great thank yous that they were giving for nurses, nurse appreciation at the high school and also, or at the middle school, and also some little fun candy bars and little staff treats, you know, to just keep our staff going, and that we're lucky to have all those amazing teachers. They're looking into more bingo nights and fun activities, and they will meet again on Tuesday, March 15th at 7 p.m.
Great, thank you. Rachel, I think you said there was no report for Wheeler? Yes. Thank you. Correct council report, is there a report, Becky?
Yeah, the only thing I just wanted to report is we used to call it the legislative breakfast, but being as though we're virtual, I don't think we're calling it that anymore unless we're all eating breakfast at home. It's the legislative,
Update
what do they call it?
or update, I think.
Update, maybe a legislative update. It's supposed to be a panel discussion.
Yeah.
And that is being held by CREC, HASA, and CABE, I believe. And so that is being held on Thursday, the 17th, that's just a few days from now, 9 to 10 a.m. Anybody's interested in registering to get the link, I believe, probably was shared by Joan, if I'm not mistaken. All right, that's all I have, thanks.
Thank you. The chairperson's report, I just wanted to briefly talk about the lighthouse training that the board has taken some time in learning through CABE. And this is some training that initially took 3 years to come together with, and it was a big help for the school boards. We had a gentleman from CREC come in and speak to all of us, and they basically took what they learned from years past and kind of helped the boards to do better with their curriculums. And we're looking into all getting together and participating in this lighthouse training. So, I don't know, I just wanted to at least say that we are all looking into learning some new methods and skills offered to us by by CABE, sorry. Wrong school. And was there one other thing? Or no? I think that was it. All right, so we don't have any unfinished business this evening. New business, board open forum. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to speak about?
Lori, I wanted to thank all the individuals who came out and spoke to us earlier with all the different topics that they talked to. We don't often get more than one or two people to come, so that was kind of massive. And my favorite quote of the day, I just have to say, is, especially it's Valentine's Day, right? Love is not pizza. And because it never runs out. So I just thought, I had to write that down. I'm like, I'm going to go home and tell my husband that's his gift. Love is not pizza. That's about all he's going to get this year, unfortunately.
I would just like to recognize those of you who came to speak tonight who have stayed for the entire part of this meeting. So I thank you for your stick-to-itiveness and for your interest in what is really going on in Plainville Community Schools. And it really, from our point of view, is really appreciated. Thank you.
And I would just like to, just have a big shout out to our school counselors. Last week was the National School Counseling Week. And I'd just like to express, my deepest appreciation for all that they do to ensure the, academic success and well-being of our students and our families here in Plainville. And I thank them for all that they do to, help our students create their own paths towards success and helping them feel, safe, valued, and respected here in our community schools. So a big thank you to all of them.
I just wanted to say thank you for our bookmarks. They are amazing. And this Valentine's Day, it seems timely to just I'm thankful for all the efforts for inclusivity made by our schools and how they are working so hard on equity and making sure our students do feel safe. And I look forward to continue partnering with them on that.
Good evening, if I may. I also wanted to say thank you to everybody who stayed here. I know it's been a lot of opinions and sometimes difficult to listen. There's a lot of emotion and, everybody deserves to be listened to and be respected. And I want to say that I appreciate all my peers here on the board. And thank you to everyone for all the hard work that we've been putting in. And it's really hard sometimes to be here listening, and that you've all done a great job too. So I want to say thank you to each other, and also thank you to Mr. LePage, especially for putting in all these hours and getting all the work done to do this presentation along with the budget. It has not been easy, so going above and beyond, and we are very grateful for you and each other. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I just would like to thank Jalen Thigpen for playing the trumpet this evening. He did such a wonderful job. Just amazing job. He's a very talented student. And I'd also like to thank the student presenters that came in and patiently waited for everyone to speak. And I'd also like to thank our speakers. It was really nice to have you all here and speak your feelings in a calm manner and everyone just listening to each other. And I think that's it for me. Thank you, everybody. Anybody else?
Because it was for the students.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to quarterly special education cost report. There's no report. The next report will be given next month. And same goes for the turf committee report. There's no report, and the next report will be given in May. Now we can look at items D through O. Policies, we have a large number of policies and regulations this evening. As a reminder of the process, we are approving the policies first, basically stating that we, the members of the Board of Education, agree with the information set forth in these policies and are ready for them to become the official policies of the district. We will then postpone the policies to give the public time to look them over and to give them the opportunity to bring any questions or concerns to us at our next business meeting. After the second reading and approval, the policies will then become district policy. If there are no objections, I will ask for a motion to approve the aforementioned policies, items D through O. Can I have a motion?
I so move, Madam Chairman, that we accept for first reading those policies, those 12 policies, D through O.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I have an abstention.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to postpone the aforementioned policies, items D through O, for a second reading?
Motion to postpone the vote on the policies.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. As a side note, regulations are not policy and therefore only need one reading and are placed under the consent agenda. I'm going to request approval for fiscal year 22-23 proposed Board of Education operating budget. I ask all board members to reply yes or no as to whether they are in favor of the proposed 3.72% budget put forth to us this evening. I would like to hold a roll call vote. Please respond yes or no. Mrs. Buchanan.
Point of order, Madam Chairman, I think we need the actual
Yeah, we need a motion.
motion first. So I'll make a motion that we approve the budget.
I second the
Oh,
motion.
sorry, yes, yes, okay. I will now ask for a motion to accept and approve the proposed operating budget of 3.72%, which is an increase of $1,016,671, including an additional increase of $465,154 in health insurance, with a total of $41,308,797 for fiscal year 22-23.
The motion
Okay.
was made and seconded, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Oh, no, we have to do the roll call now. Mrs. Buchanan, what is your vote?
I vote yes.
Ms. Clark?
I vote yes.
Mrs. Hardy? Mrs. Martinez?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. St. Lawrence?
Yes.
Mrs. Tyrell?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
And myself, I will vote yes.
Thank
So
you.
the motion passes.
Madam Chair, would you like a motion for the consent agenda?
Yes, we have a couple of regulations, excuse me, on the consent agenda. Is there any need for discussion on either of the regulations? If so, we'll need a motion to take those regulations off of the consent agenda for discussion. If there's no discussion, then I can get a motion.
I move we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. And now, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Motion unanimously carries.
We don't face life with a little humor, Steve. We're all lost.
You need a lot of humor.
Oh, these days, I don't know how you're doing.
Thank you. Not so well, to be honest. I've been crabby and grumpy.
Oh,
It's unlike me.
want
Usually
to
a
stop
bundle of
over
joy.
anytime. My son gave me an excellent bottle of scotch for my birthday.
Is that right?
Yeah. Sure.
Dana, it's good to see you. How are you? I'm hanging in there. How are you? Hanging in there. So proud. 2:30 in the morning when I got him sent I couldn't sleep. I pulled up the phone and I started tapping away. And I made a few edits, but sometimes I think that's like when I'm in that classroom. It was funny. I can